Chapter 351. After a day, the handprint on Sue Pasian's face had faded a little. However, she didn't apply any medicine or do anything else. She returned to the country with this face. She wanted this handprint to remind her of the humiliation she had suffered in Japan. She also wanted Su Qinghui to see how Su Qingsang bullied her. Su Qinghui had been very busy recently. Even during the holidays he was still working overtime. Pasian, you're back. How was your trip to Japan? Su Qinghui didn't stop writing. When he saw Su Pasian, he just asked a question and lowered his head to deal with work. Dad. Su Pasian had already rushed in front of Su Qinghui. Her voice was unusual. Su Qinghui looked up at her and saw the handprint on his daughter's face at a glance. What happened to you? Su Qinghui suddenly stood up, walked around the desk, and walked in front of Su Pasian. Who hit you? Who? There was obvious anger on his face. How could he have imagined that his precious daughter would be slapped in the face like this? In Lin City, who would dare to do such a thing? Dad. If Su Pasian had only been putting on an act at the beginning, she really felt aggrieved at this moment. She felt so wronged. She was really wrong, angry and full of hatred. Pasian. Su Qinghui had never seen Su Pasian like this. For a moment he only felt sorry for her. Don't cry. Tell me who hit you first. Su Pasian couldn't stop her emotions. It took her a long time to calm down. Pasian. Su Qinghui looked at his daughter crying so hard that her eyes were red. He really felt sorry for her. Don't cry. What happened to you? You said something. Dad. Su Pasian took a deep breath and calmed herself down. You won't let anyone bully me, right? Of course. Su Qinghui nodded. You're my daughter. How could I let anyone bully you? Then if someone bullies me, you'll also settle the score with that person, right? Of course. Su Qinghui nodded. No one will think about bullying you. Su Pasian nodded and finally felt relieved. The one who bullied me was Su Qingsang. Qingsang? Su Qinghui frowned when he heard this. Why are you again? Didn't you go to Japan? How could? Su Qinghui didn't believe that Su Qingsang would take the initiative to bully Su Pasian. She more or less knew Su Qingsang's personality. The less trouble the better. Why would he provoke Su Pasian for no reason? Dad. I didn't finish. The person who bullied me was Su Qingsang's mother. Su Qingsang's mother? Su Qinghui didn't understand. Who are you talking about? Su Qingsang's mother. Su Pasian recalled what Xiang Kaiping had said to her the other day. Her mother actually called my mother a mistress? She said that my mother snatched you away from her. This can't be real, right? She lied to me, right? What do you mean her mother, your mother? Su Qinghui thought of something and suddenly became a little confused. Tell me slowly. I can't understand you like this. Dad. Su Pasian had finally calmed down. Looking at Su Qinghui's face, she knew that he truly cared about her. She felt much more at ease. After calming down, she took a deep breath and told him about her encounter with Su Qingsang and her mother in Japan. Su Pasian was much less angry with Su Qingsang than Xiang Kaiping. After all, Su Qingsang was Su Qinghui's daughter. Chapter 352. How dare she hit her and humiliate her like that? Dad, tell me. I'm begging you to tell me that I'm not what that woman said. My mother is not what that woman said. Tell me, tell me. Su Pasian was a little agitated. She shook Su Qinghui's arm and insisted on an answer. Dad, tell me, tell me. She lied to me, didn't she? Didn't she? Su Qinghui was dumbfounded. He didn't expect things to develop like this. For him this was really a shocking thing. How could this happen? How did Su Qingsang meet Su Pasian in Japan? Not only did they meet, but Xiang Kaiping and Su Pasian had sex? Looking at Su Pasian, Su Qinghui was speechless. For the first time in decades he felt a little confused. There was a kind of anxiety that things were out of his control. That kind of anxiety made his brain stop for a moment. Listening to Su Pasian's anxious voice, he suddenly calmed down. He didn't get his position in the Li group for more than 20 years for nothing. He didn't work hard to make the Su family what it was now. If he hadn't been able to weigh the pros and cons, how could he have become what he was now? Dad, tell me. Seeing that he didn't answer her, Su Pasian became more and more anxious. Was Su Qinghui really like what that woman said? Was it really because her mother took him from her? Pasian. Listen to me. Su Qinghui put his hand on Su Peijian's shoulder and said calmly, don't worry about these things. Let's just forget about it. What? Su Peijian's eyes widened. She couldn't believe her ears. Dad, what did you say? I said let's just forget about it. Dad. Su Peijian raised her voice. She couldn't believe her ears. What did you say? Say it again. I said. Is what that woman said true? The only thing Su Peijian could think of was this. Did my mother really take you from her? Peijian. Su Qinghui frowned. He wanted to explain, but Su Peijian didn't want to hear it. Don't call me that. She shook her head. Thinking of that woman, she wanted to slap her. Do you know that woman hit me? She hit me? Su Peijian couldn't take this lying down. Ever since we were young, you and my mother couldn't even bear to lay a finger on me. But that woman hit me? Peijian. You don't want to help me take revenge. Don't want to help me punish the woman who bullied me. And instead want me to let it go? Su Peijian took a big step back and kept shaking her head. So those were all true. You really don't love my mom? You love that woman. Su Qinghui frowned subconsciously. Peijian, it's not what you think. Your mother and I, actually you. I don't want to hear it. Su Peijian couldn't take it anymore. She waved her hand, her face full of despair. No wonder that woman dared to hit me. Peijian. Su Qinghui hadn't expected the conflict between Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping. Chapter 353. Su Qinghui was stunned again. Subconsciously he resisted the idea. Peijian, I didn't. If you didn't, why didn't you help me? Su Peijian was now sure that Xiang Kaiping was telling the truth. You love that woman, so you'd rather watch me get bullied than help me, right? Peijian. What did he mean? Su Qinghui took her hand. Calm down. Many things are not what you think. I told you to let it go, because I didn't want you to have a conflict with her. After all, she is Su Qingsang's mother, the woman you love the most, right? Su Peijian pushed Su Qinghui's hand away. The first half of her life had been smooth. If he wants the wind, if he wants the rain, he gets the rain. But recently, she had kicked the biggest iron plate. And now she was being humiliated by her most respected father. Peijian, it's not what you think. Su Qinghui felt a headache when he saw Su Peijian like this. He almost blurted out the words that had been buried in his heart. Dad, don't find excuses for yourself. You can't explain yourself because I'm right. I'm right about everything. Is that right? Su Peijian couldn't listen to it anymore. She only felt that she had been hurt, greatly hurt. Dad, you just watched an outsider bully me. Are you worthy of me and my mother? Su Qinghui's eyes widened. He took a step forward and seemed to want to explain. Peijian, listen to me. Actually. Su Peijian didn't listen. Su Qinghui was a little anxious. His determination to disregard everything had reached its peak at this moment. Peijian, you may not believe what I'm going to say next, but it's true. Su Peijian's phone rang. Su Peijian didn't want to listen to Su Qinghui's explanation. She avoided him and answered the phone on the other side. Peijian, I heard you're back. Where are you? The call was from Li Qianxue. Su Peijian seemed to have found a way to vent. She couldn't control herself when facing Li Qianxue. Mom. Peijian, what's wrong? Li Qianxue had never heard her daughter cry like this. Not even when she broke off the engagement with Qiu Yanba. Peijian. Su Qinghui took a step forward, looked at Su Peijian, and kept winking at her. Mom, I was bullied. Su Peijian didn't notice the look in Su Qinghui's eyes. Since Su Qinghui wasn't willing to make the decision for her, she would look for someone who could. Are you with your father? Wait a minute. I'll be right there. Li Qianxue heard Su Peijian's complaint and said without thinking. You're in the company? Give me a few minutes. I happen to be nearby. Su Peijian hung up the phone. When she saw Su Qinghui's hesitant face, she couldn't help but feel resentful. Dad, since you're not willing to stand up for me, I can only let my mom stand up for me. Peijian. You. Su Qinghui knew that Li Qianxue would come over later. He couldn't tell Su Peijian what he had wanted to tell her. He rubbed the space between his eyebrows tiredly, and suddenly felt a great sense of powerlessness. He knew Li Qianxue's personality. The situation was getting out of control. 15 minutes later, Li Qianxue appeared in Su Qinghui's office. When she saw the handprint on Su Peijian's face, her whole face turned livid. Chapter 354. Su Peijian returned home a day earlier than Su Qingseng. Therefore, Su Qingseng didn't know that Xiang Caiping's slap had caused Li Qianxue and Su Peijian's greatest dissatisfaction. She had just gotten off the plane. Looking at Hu Jinniao, who looked much better after a long rest, she relaxed a little. The temperature in Japan was lower than in Lin City. Su Qingseng felt a little hot after getting off the plane. The first thing Hu Jinniao did was to take off the thick coat for her. Let's go. Yang Wencheng will come to pick us up later. Okay. Su Qingseng rested for a while on the plane and felt much better now. She looked at Xiang Caiping worriedly and shook her head at him. I slept for a while on the plane. I feel much better now. Then let's go home. They went home. Although Su Qingseng went out with Xiang Caiping, she still bought some things. Su Peijian naturally didn't need them. She brought gifts for her colleagues in the department. There were also gifts for Su Chunghui. Most importantly, they were for Shi Mingwan. Su Qingseng called her almost as soon as she got home and asked her to come over for dinner and gifts. After resting in the afternoon, Sister Lu came over with a bunch of ingredients at Hu Jinniao's order. After a few days in Japan, Su Qingseng wanted to eat hot pot. Xiang Caiping said that it wasn't hygienic outside and suggested to cook at home. Su Qingseng knew that she was in a bad mood these days, so she wanted to have hot pot to liven things up. Sister Lu bought a lot of ingredients, including big bones. She asked Sister Lu to make soup with big bones according to the method on the internet. Then she added hot pot seasoning. One side was chili oil, and the other was clear soup. Xiang Caiping washed and picked vegetables with her. The gloomy mood of the past few days was swept away. Su Qingseng was more or less relieved. Shi Mingwan came over before it was time for dinner. She had won that award, and many people were getting married at the end of the year. She was actually very busy. When Su Qingseng saw her, she found that there were dark circles under her eyes. What's wrong? Didn't you sleep well? Yeah. Shi Mingwan yawned. I was drawing until 2 last night. Su Qingseng frowned and felt a little sorry for her. You're not in a hurry. You can hire someone to help you. Why do you have to make yourself so tired? It's fine. I'm used to it. Shi Mingwan wrapped her arms around her neck and said, You, on the other hand, look good. Did you have fun? It's all right. Hu Jinniao did not come back. Xiang Caiping was helping out in the kitchen. There were some things that she could talk to Shi Mingwan about. He pulled her into the room, saying that he was there to get her a present. He told her about how he had met Su Peijian in Japan, and how Xiang Caiping had slapped her. What did you say? Shi Mingwan's eyes widened in shock. In addition to shock, there was also a hint of worship. Your mother slapped Su Peijian? Su Qingseng gestured for them to keep quiet, and looked outside. It's already happened. Now that I'm back, I have a headache. Are you afraid of Su Peijian or Li Qianxue? No matter who it was, Hu Jinniao had a way to deal with it, right? That's not it. Su Qingseng shook her head. What was to come would come. She had never thought of running away. My mother is a thoughtful person. She always feels that she owes me for all these years. So I. Chapter 355. Smart. That's what I mean. After spending so much time with Xiang Caiping, Su Qingseng really saw her as her mother. She didn't want her to suffer. It's nothing. Leave it to me. Shi Mingwan patted Su Qingseng's shoulder as she spoke. Don't worry. Su Qingseng knew Shi Mingwan very well. Compared with her somewhat dull personality, Shi Mingwan was much more cheerful and lively. Xiang Caiping had always liked her. With her around, she would be happier. Let's go. Let's go out. Su Qingseng held Shi Mingwan's arm. I'm not worried. Hu Jinniao and I were thinking about something else. What? Move to Rong City. You want to leave this place? Shi Mingwan was really shocked this time. Just to avoid the Su family? Su Qingseng shook her head. Not really. Hu Jinniao was originally from Rong City. He had been developing his career here because of me. His grandfather always wants us to go back. Shi Mingwan didn't say anything. In fact, she didn't know what to say. Hu Jinniao was married to Su Qingseng. It was normal for him to want to bring Su Qingseng home. However, she was still very reluctant. Qingseng, I don't want you to go. It's still early. It was just a decision. Don't worry. We'll be together for a long time. Shi Mingwan sighed and hugged Su Qingsang tightly. If I had known, I wouldn't have let you marry Hu Jiniao. Sure. I won't marry him. I'll marry you. I support you. Shi Mingwan's eyes widened. Hurry up and abandon him. Come into my arms. That won't do. Hu Jiniao was leaning against the door and looking at the two of them. The wife is mine. Don't even think about taking her away from me. You're back. Su Qingsang smiled and let go of Shi Mingwan's hand. Just in time. We can start eating. I'm just informing you that you can eat now. Let's go. Hu Jiniao stepped forward, took Su Qingsang's hand and led her out. Shi Mingwan clicked her tongue at the back, looking hurt. My husband abandoned me as soon as he arrived. You even said you wanted to throw yourself into my arms. Woman, you really value love over friendship. Let's go. You talk too much. Su Qingsang was amused by her. He turned around and extended his hand to Shi Mingwan, but she avoided it with a proud look on her face. Thanks. There was no need for that. I'm not going to be your third wheel. With these words, she went outside. Xiang Kaiping had just put the pot on the dining table and was smiling when she saw her. Mingwan, it's time to eat. Auntie. Shi Mingwan stepped forward to hold her arm. Qingsang bullied me. Ah. Xiang Kaiping looked at Shi Mingwan, who was accusing Su Qingsang of forgetting friends in love. Xiang Kaiping had always been beautiful, and her facial features carried a kind of flamboyant beauty. Coupled with her crisp voice and lively words, Xiang Kaiping was amused by her. He made Xiang Kaiping happy and kept talking to her. Shi Mingwan sat down and winked at Su Qingsang. Seeing that, Su Qingsang smiled and made a gesture of thanks. The two sisters thought that no one else could see their little tricks, but in fact Hu Jiniao saw it. Her eyes fell on Su Qingsang. She smiled faintly as she watched Shi Mingwan and Xiang Kaiping talk. Her eyes were curved with a faint smile. Chapter 356. Su Qingsang noticed Hu Jiniao's movement and turned to smile at him. Both Shi Mingwan and Xiang Kaiping noticed their subtle movements. Xiang Kaiping heaved a sigh of relief. There was a hint of envy and gloom in Shi Mingwan's eyes. She thought about how she met Zhang Haoze a few days ago. Unlike Su Qingsang's luck, Hu Jiniao was hers and only hers. Su Qingsang was standing next to him. However, there was another woman beside Zhang Haoze. The person beside him was not her. More importantly, Zhang Haoze had long forgotten their agreement. Shaking her head, Shi Mingwan's emotional change only lasted for a moment. Soon she was talking and laughing again. He had his daughter, son-in-law and Shi Mingwan. As expected, Xiang Kaiping was in high spirits. What happened in the past had already happened. In the future, she would treat her daughter even better. He picked up the beef from the pot and put it into Su Qingsang's bowl. Then put some vegetables into Shi Mingwan's bowl. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. Just when the atmosphere was good, the doorbell of Su Qingsang's house rang. Su Qingsang and Hu Jiniao looked at each other. He put a hand on her shoulder and got up to open the door. The person standing outside the door was Su Qinghui. Obviously, he didn't expect Hu Jiniao to open the door. He was taken aback. The dining room was connected to the living room. Su Qingsang was sitting at the edge of the dining table, near the living room. Seeing Hu Jiniao standing still, she turned her head and saw Su Qinghui at the door. Frowning, she subconsciously looked at Xiang Kaiping, who was sitting beside her. The smell of hot pot in the restaurant was very strong. Naturally, Su Qinghui also smelled it. You're eating? Hu Jiniao nodded slightly. Yes, we just started eating. Have you eaten, Dad? No. Su Qinghui answered subconsciously. After that, he felt a little uncomfortable. You guys go ahead. Su Qingsang felt a little awkward. She was supposed to invite Su Qinghui in for dinner, but Xiang Kaiping turned her face away from the man. She was still upset. When Shi Mingwan saw this, she tried to smooth things over again. Hello, uncle. As she spoke, she gave Su Qingsang a look. Su Qingsang sighed, stood up, and walked over to Hu Jiniao. Dad, if you haven't eaten, let's eat together. But I don't know if you'll eat it. We're having hot pot today. Hot pot. Okay. Su Qinghui was a little surprised. He glanced at Su Qingsang and walked in. The dining table was rectangular. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao sat on one side, while Xiang Kaiping and Shi Mingwan sat on the other. Sister Lu was sitting next to Su Qinghui, so there was only one seat left for him. Su Qinghui sat down with Su Qingsang on his left and Xiang Kaiping on his right. Some ingredients had been placed on the table, but there was still a lot left. The yuanyang pot was steaming hot at this time. Su Qinghui had never experienced such a scene before. He went from being the manager of the Li Corporation to the general manager of the Li Corporation. When he was with Li Qianxue, his status became higher and higher, and fewer people dared to act casually in front of him. In the Li family, old Master Li had high blood pressure and a light but healthy diet. When he was outside, he would order a separate portion of the company's lunch. As for socializing outside, they would all go to high-end hotels. And the people they interacted with were all business elites or directors. There was no such thing as a table full of people eating hot pot together. Looking at the steaming hot pot, the smell was actually a little strong, but the smell was surprisingly appetizing. Chapter 357. The atmosphere was a bit stagnant. Su Qinghui didn't speak, and so did the others. Xiang Kaiping frowned and looked at the ingredients in the pot. Finally, she picked up a piece of meat and put it in Su Qingsang's bowl. Eat. Thanks, Mom. The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. She knew that Xiang Kaiping was a little annoyed that Su Qinghui had come at this time. Dad, you should eat too. Xiang Kaiping could ignore her father, but Su Qingsang couldn't. I don't know if you'll like it. If you don't like spicy food, you can have the clear broth over here. Su Qingsang knew that Su Qinghui and his family usually ate light food. All right. Su Qinghui didn't refuse. After Sister Lu got him a bowl, he started eating. Shi Mingwan was a little reserved at first. After all, she was also a little afraid of Su Qinghui. However, thinking about today's mission and looking at Xiang Kaiping's cold face, she had no choice but to continue playing the role of the Joker. Auntie, eat this. Qingsang likes it very much too. Shi Mingwan picked up a shrimp dumpling for Xiang Kaiping. Really? These days, Xiang Kaiping was still trying to get along with Su Qingsang. She also wanted to know what Su Qingsang liked to eat. Did you guys go to hot pot often in the past? Yes, especially when the weather is cold. Shi Mingwan glanced at Su Qingsang as she spoke. Auntie, you don't know. Qingsang had a hard time taking the postgraduate entrance examination. He would read until 1 or 2 in the morning every day. She even forgot to eat dinner a few times. And I was the one who brought her food. You're so nice to Qingsang. Xiang Kaiping glanced at Qingsang as she spoke. No matter how much you think about your studies, your health is the most important. Don't do this again. Mom, I didn't. Listen to her exaggeration. Su Qingsang glanced at Shi Mingwan and said, Why don't you say that you're still drawing at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? Yes, you were the one who brought me food, so that I wouldn't starve to death. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie, you don't know this, but Qingsang took care of me more. After all, my life has been turned upside down more than hers. You are all good children. It's not that exaggerated. Su Qingsang sensed Hu Jinyao's gaze and explained blandly, Actually, we lived together during that time. Let's take care of each other. That's right. The room you're living in now used to be mine. Later, Shi Mingwan chose a studio far away and made money, so she moved out. But when he was free, he would still come back to stay for 2 days. After Su Qingsang got married, he came less often. You can come and stay next time, as long as you don't mind. Auntie, what are you talking about? Why would I despise you? Shi Mingwan made a fist gesture. Qingsang is like a sister to me. Her mother is my mother. With Shi Mingwan around, the atmosphere of the meal was the same as before. Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He sat there and listened to other people talking about his daughter. It wasn't the first time he looked at his daughter, but it was the first time he looked at her so seriously. Unbeknownst to him, Su Qingsang had grown from a child to a young lady. Her smile was not as gorgeous as Su Peixian's, but it was extremely gentle. His eyes were curved, as if he could see the shadow of his youth. Chapter 358. Su Qinghui suddenly fell silent. He noticed that both Hu Jingyao and Xiang Kaiping liked to put food in Su Qingsang's bowl. He listened to Shi Mingwan talk about some interesting things that happened to Su Qingsang when she was a postgraduate student in university. He also remembered some interesting things that Su Qingsang had encountered in the hospital. He suddenly realized that this was the first time he had been so close to his daughter, and the first time he had understood her so well. Before that, all his memories of his daughter were of Su Peijian. When did Su Peijian start to grow teeth, talk and walk? He remembered clearly when he was in kindergarten, when he entered university, and when he received his first love letter from a male classmate. What about Su Qingsang? But he couldn't remember at all. He did not speak. He was silent, and no one spoke to him. Occasionally, Hu Jinyao would ask him about work cooperation, but he answered absent-mindedly. He thought about the purpose of his visit today, and his gaze fell on Xiang Kaiping. She was looking at Su Qingsang and listening to her talk about some interesting interns in the hospital. Her eyes were filled with a loving smile. She only had eyes for her daughter. I'm so full. Shi Mingwan patted her belly. I'm going to die. Tomorrow, I'll really gain 1 kilogram. With your figure, it doesn't matter if you gain another 5 kilograms. Although Shi Mingwan wasn't thin, she definitely wasn't fat. Don't. It was getting colder, and I could feel the flesh on my waist getting thicker. If I keep eating like this, I'm going to lose weight. Little girls, why would you want to lose weight? Xiang Kaiping looked at the two of them. You're not allowed to lose weight. Body first. Especially Mingwan. Next time you come over, I will cook something delicious for you. Auntie, you'll feed me like a pig. Who said that? How can there be such a beautiful pig? Xiang Kaiping's teasing made Shi Mingwan burst into laughter. The smile on Su Qingsang's face finally widened. I'm full too. So full. Su Qingsang straightened up and found that Su Qinghui was still sitting in his seat. She rolled her eyes and looked at Hu Jinyao. Why don't we go out for a walk? Digestion. I'll go too. Shi Mingwan also stood up. Let's go together. Do you mind if I'm the third wheel? I do mind. I don't mind. Su Qingsang couldn't help but glare at him. What are you doing? Hu Jinyao cleared his throat. It's getting late. I'm going back to rest. Shi Mingwan blinked and turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, look at this. I was given the cold shoulder. Auntie doesn't mind you. You stay here with Auntie. Auntie, thank you. Shi Mingwan clutched her chest, still looking hurt. But I'm hurt. I'm going home to comfort my broken heart alone. Mingwan. Mom, let's go down first. Su Qingsang couldn't stay any longer. She could tell that Su Qinghui had something to say to Xiang Kaiping. It was better for them not to stay there and cause trouble. Qingsang. Mom. Su Qingsang held Xiang Kaiping's hand, intending to pull her hand away. Let's go for a walk in the neighborhood downstairs. It'll be fine. Auntie. I have to go too. Shi Mingwan stood up. Actually, I can't be a third wheel. I still have to go home to draw. The three young people left. Sister Lu swiftly cleaned up the table and bowls before taking her leave. Chapter 359. There was still a faint smell of hot pot in the air, and the lively atmosphere just now had disappeared without a trace. Xiang Kaiping wanted to go back to her room. She thought of something and got up to sit down in the living room. She turned on the phone, picked up the sweater that was half knitted, and started knitting again. Su Qinghui had been sitting at the dining table. After his daughter and son-in-law left, he stood up straight and stood next to Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping ignored him. He walked to her and sat down. Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping didn't stop knitting. She didn't even look at him. Her actions made Su Qinghui feel annoyed. Looking at Xiang Kaiping's wrinkled face, which was no longer young, he felt very complicated. Did he love her? He didn't know, but he felt pity and heartache. Xiang Kaiping's appearance made it much easier to find out about her past. Su Qinghui had also sent someone to investigate. He had also read the reports. It was because of that he felt a little heartache. In fact, he and Xiang Kaiping grew up together. They were childhood sweethearts, and their relationship was the most precious and understanding. He understood Xiang Kaiping and knew that she was weak. However, such a weak woman had to learn to work hard like a man. It really made his heart ache. He sighed and thought of something that had been troubling him. Kaiping, did you go to Japan with Chingseng a few days ago? Xiang Kaiping didn't answer him. She raised the sweater and looked at it. The bottom of the sweater was already knitted. She was thinking about how to knit a pattern on it. Kaiping. Su Qinghui knew that she was angry with him, but he thought that such anger would dissipate. Xiang Kaiping put down the sweater and looked at him coldly. You already know. Why are you asking me? Su Qinghui was speechless. Xiang Kaiping's stubbornness made him feel a little helpless. Yes, I know. Peijin also went to Japan and met you. Xiang Kaiping knew when he said this. She chuckled, and a rare hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. Su Qinghui, are you here to stand up for your daughter? Kaiping, what are you talking about? Isn't it? Xiang Kaiping sneered. Chingseng couldn't have told you that I went to Japan with Chingseng, so it can only be that good daughter of yours. She didn't just tell me that she went to Japan with Chingseng, right? She also told you that I slapped her, right? Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Kaiping. He had never seen her so sharp. Kaiping, what are you doing here today? So you're here to stand up for your daughter? Xiang Kaiping could only feel an inexplicable anger rising in her. Li Qinshua's daughter was a human being. Was Xiang Kaiping's daughter not a human being? Kaiping, why would you think of me this way? Su Qinghui widened his eyes and stared at Xiang Kaiping. He couldn't stand her sharp words. I wanted to talk to you about Peijin today, but I definitely didn't want to help her vent her anger. What's that? Xiang Kaiping hated Su Qinghui the moment she saw him. She hated his heartlessness, hated his indifference, hated his selfishness. She also hated him for not caring about Su Chingseng. Since you're not here to help her vent her anger, are you here to apologize for her rudeness? Rudeness? Apologize? Su Qinghui was stunned. Chapter 360. Su Qinghui was stunned. Peijin. Xiang Kaiping could tell from his expression that he didn't know about it at all. The anger on her face grew. Look, you don't know what happened, and you don't know what your good daughter said. Why are you here in such a hurry to avenge her? Kaiping, I'm not. You're not what? You're not here to explain for your good daughter? You're not here to avenge Li Qinshua's daughter? Then tell me, what are you here for? Su Qinghui was silent, looking at Xiang Kaiping's agitated face. He couldn't say a word. You can't speak, can you? Xiang Kaiping didn't want to see Su Qinghui. He hadn't changed much in all these years. He was still elegant and handsome. Not only did he not age, but he also became more mature, adding to the charm of a mature man. But now, no matter how handsome Su Qinghui was, he couldn't move her at all. She only had hatred for him. Su Qinghui, I don't want to see you. Get out. Su Qinghui sat still. He thought of how Li Qinshua's face turned pale when she found out that Su Peijin had been slapped yesterday. He knew Li Qinshua's personality and her bottom line. Li Qinshua's bottom line was her children. She was fierce in public, but in front of Su Peijin and Su Yusin, she had the heart of a mother. Su Peijin had been slapped, and Li Qinshuo had to avenge her. If she hadn't known that Su Chingseng and Xiang Kaiping were still in Japan, she would have come here long ago. Kaiping. Su Qinghui closed his eyes. He lowered his head and rubbed his temples, feeling exhausted again. You shouldn't have hit Peijin. If one day Xiang Kaiping knew everything, would she regret it? He didn't know, but he was sure that he did, because he had never thought that Xiang Kaiping, whom he thought he would never see again, would come back one day. Xiang Kaiping was shaking with anger. She stood up and pulled Su Qinghui up, who was still in a daze. She kept pulling his arm. Get out, get out. Su Qinghui, I don't want to see you for the rest of my life. Kaiping. When Su Qinghui's body was about to touch the door, he couldn't help but yell. Chingseng is not your daughter at all. Xiang Kaiping stopped shoving him. The night wind was a little chilly. Shi Mengwan went downstairs, took her gift, said goodbye to Su Chingseng, and went home. It was the end of the year, but she was still busy drawing. There were many things to do. Su Chingseng felt sorry for her, and told her several times not to stay up too late. Shi Mengwan waved her hand, started the car and left. After Shi Mengwan left, Su Chingseng turned around, and found that Hu Jingyao had been staring at her. What's wrong? He looked at her like that. Was there something on her face? Honey. Hua Jinyao put his arms around her waist and said, I'm a little jealous. You care so much about Shi Mengwan. You've never cared about me like this. Su Qingseng looked up at him helplessly. Hua Jinyao, aren't you childish? Not childish. Hua Jinyao pecked her lips. I'm your husband and you're my wife. You should treat me the best. Chapter 361. I don't know. Hua Jinyao didn't care about Su Qinghui. The two families were cooperating. For the sake of Su Qingsang's father, he would give him some face. However, it was impossible for Su Qinghui to bully Su Qingsang. I'm worried. Su Qingsang didn't tell Hua Jinyao about what happened in Japan. But now, Su Qingsang was worried that Su Qinghui would come to Xiang Kaiping, because Su Peijian was beaten up. What are you worried about? Hua Jinyao sensed something different. Nothing. She decided not to tell Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang shook her head, believing that Xiang Kaiping could handle it herself. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at her. His arms around her waist suddenly tightened. Tell me, what's going on? Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line and held Hua Jinyao's hand instead. Nothing. I just don't understand. What? Tell me, does my dad love my mom or my auntie? The auntie she was referring to was Li Qianxue. After calling her that for so many years, she couldn't change the way she addressed her. Moreover, Xiang Kaiping wasn't there now. She wouldn't be able to hear her calling Xiang Kaiping like that. You'll have to ask him himself. Hua Jinyao didn't see that Su Qinghui loved Xiang Kaiping or Li Qianxue. If he loved my mother, then why did he stay under the same roof with auntie for so many years? If he loves auntie, why is he pestering my mother now? Do you want to hear the truth? Hua Jinyao squeezed her hand with an unruly smile on his face. Speak. In my opinion, your father doesn't love anyone but himself. Su Qingsang pinched him and said, I think he's a philanthropist. I love my mom, but I can't let go of auntie. Are you saying that your father loves Su Peijian's mother? I don't know. Su Qingsang stopped walking and looked at the shadows of the trees in the neighborhood. But there's something that I've never told my mother or anyone else. What is it? What could he not tell Xiang Kaiping? Probably a few years ago. When I was in college, I went home to get something. Su Peijian and Su Yusin were not at home that day. When I came in, I heard that aunt was sick. I lived with the Su family and studied medicine, so I wanted to see her. Then I saw my dad. Li Qianxue had always been in good health. That illness was one of the few times that Su Qingsang could remember. She went upstairs and was about to go to Li Qianxue's room to take a look when she found that the door of Li Qianxue's room was not closed. She was sick at that time, and her face was burning red. She seemed to be in pain on the bed. When she was about to go in, she saw Su Qinghui coming out of the bathroom. She didn't know what she was thinking at the time, but she subconsciously avoided him and hid by the door. However, that action of hers was unnecessary. At that time, Su Qinghui didn't have time to visit her. With a towel in his hand, he stood by the bed and stared at Li Qianxue's face for a long time. His expression seemed to be hesitating. Finally, he placed it on Li Qianxue's forehead. Actually, I've only seen my dad like that once. I don't know how to describe his expression at that time. In any case, it was very complicated. At that time, she didn't understand love, let alone love. She had a vague idea that Su Qinghui probably had feelings for Li Qianxue. Chapter 362. That was the only time. Later, when she left quietly, she secretly paid attention to the way Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue interacted. She found that Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were a respectful couple in front of old Master Li. But in private, he was as cold as he could be. He was so cold that she began to suspect that she might have been wrong that day, or that Su Qinghui felt that he hadn't tortured Li Qianxue enough, so he couldn't bear to see her sick and die. So do you think my father loves auntie? Are you trying to say that your father is a scumbag? Eating from the bowl, thinking about the pot? Hua Jinyao touched his chin and made such an annotation. Su Qingsang gritted her teeth and hit his chest hard. What are you talking about? She did think that Su Qinghui was not a good man. However, hearing Hua Jinyao talk about his biological father like that, she felt a little strange. Don't talk about my father like that. It was not good for Su Qinghui to hear it. Su Qingsang turned her face to look at him, and her eyes were a little teasing. If I say that again, you're a scumbag? Don't you men all like that? Eating from the bowl, thinking about the pot? Don't wrongly accuse me. Hua Jinyao held her body in his arms. I'm not included in the people you're talking about. You're not a man. Wife. Hua Jinyao's face was serious, but there was an obvious hint in his eyes. Tonight, you can fully experience whether I'm a man or not. Su Qingsang's face suddenly turned red, and she was speechless. All right, let's go back. Don't worry, wife. Hua Jinyao didn't move, but instead pulled her back into his arms. I'm a narrow-minded person, so I can only accommodate you. Su Qingsang stared at him. In the night, Hua Jinyao's eyes were as bright as stars, and only her shadow could be seen in them. She felt as if her heart had been hit hard by Hua Jinyao, and her whole heart beat uncontrollably. Wife, I'm serious. Su Qingsang's face was burning. It was not the first time she had heard Hua Jinyao's confession, but it was the first time she had such a strong emotional fluctuation. She looked down and nodded. I believe you. What about you? Hua Jinyao lifted her chin and made her look at him. What about your heart? My heart. Su Qingsang didn't understand the love between a man and a woman before this. She once had a crush on a senior in high school, but then the two of them went to different schools, so it ended. She was busy studying in university and didn't have time to date. Being with Wei Lenin was just to get rid of the Su family, so it didn't count. Looking into Hua Jinyao's eyes, she subconsciously nodded and said, I'm also very narrow-minded. After pretending to be Hua Jinyao, she probably wouldn't be able to pretend to be anyone else. Now, she was trying her best to put Hua Jinyao into her heart bit by bit. Hua Jinyao smiled. The corners of his lips were raised in a handsome and unruly way. He lowered his head and kissed Su Qingsang's lips. Su Qingsang's legs were a little weak, and she put her hands on his shoulders. Her response made his eyes heat up, and he was about to take another step further. Suddenly, a cat meowed from somewhere, and then a wild cat jumped out of the bushes. Su Qingsang was shocked. Only then did she realize that she had kissed Hua Jinyao in the garden of this neighborhood. Fortunately, there weren't many people around, or it would have been really embarrassing. Chapter 363. Hua Jinyao didn't object. Xiang Kaiping and Su Qinghui might not be done yet, but it was good to go back and take a look. If what Su Qingsang said was true, then the purpose of Su Qinghui's visit today was a little curious. Hua Jinyao had thought that Su Qinghui's behavior was a little strange, but now, it came back to him again. He was thinking, what exactly is wrong? The idea that he had faintly thought about before surged into his mind again. While Hua Jinyao was still thinking, Su Qingsang had already pulled him upstairs, and at the same time, the door of their house opened. Su Qinghui stood by the door, and Xiang Kaiping was pushing him out. Su Qinghui raised his eyes and saw Su Qingsang's face. He was stunned for a moment. Not only him, but Xiang Kaiping, who was standing behind the door, also turned pale. Many years ago, Su Qinghui did something extremely crazy. It was a crazy thing that made him think about it from time to time. He felt happy, but also a little hesitant. That year, he accidentally had sex with Li Qianxue. To him this was just an accident. What's more, he didn't like Li Qianxue at all. She was fierce, domineering, and arrogant. He didn't like her very much. He had a childhood sweetheart, Xiang Kaiping. After having sex with Li Qianxue that day, he felt a little guilty and blamed himself. Therefore, when she got home, she treated Xiang Kaiping even better. Of course, he also needed to use this method to remind himself who he liked. Who was he going to marry? However, who would have thought that Li Qianxue would unexpectedly get pregnant just like that? What kind of person was Li Qianxue? At that time, she was the daughter of the Li family and the marketing manager of the Li Corporation. She had the means and the status. More importantly, she still had a father who doted on her like a jewel, because her biological mother had passed away early. The Li family and the Cho family were the two largest families in Lin City at that time. They were family friends. At that time, half of the companies in Lin City followed their lead. As for the other companies, there was no need to mention them. If he didn't marry Li Qianxue, not only would he lose his job, but he would also not be able to stay in Lin City. He wanted to be tough for once, but at that time, there were a lot of things to do at home. In desperation, he agreed to marry Li Qianxue. Although Su Qinghui had agreed to marry Li Qianxue, it was still hard for him to accept the fact. He could marry Li Qianxue and spend the rest of his life with Li Qianxue, but he couldn't swallow the feeling of being forced to marry someone else. Even if he couldn't swallow it, he had to. The wedding was held, and he and Li Qianxue became husband and wife. Not only that, but Li Qianxue's belly was getting bigger and bigger. A business of the Li Corporation that he had not been responsible for before was also given to him. He knew that this was another form of compensation from old Master Li, but that was not what he wanted. He was ambitious and wanted to stand out, but he didn't want to rely on women. Every day, he was thinking about how to get back at Li Qianxue. Divorce? No, I can't. Bring down the Li Corporation? At that time, he didn't have that kind of ability. Kill Li Qianxue? No. He wouldn't do anything criminal. Therefore, he wouldn't even attack the Li Group. The thought of stealing trade secrets had never crossed his mind. It was true that he wanted revenge, but he would never put himself in danger. He struggled every day, especially after he heard that Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. Such thoughts grew like wild weeds. Chapter 364. All of Su Qinghui's revenge was just his imagination. He didn't have a plan. Until Li Qianxue gave birth to a daughter. It was such a coincidence. Li Qianxue's child was born at full term. However, Xiang Kaiping was not. Her body was weak, and she was born half a month early. The child was born one day after Li Qianxue's child. When he saw the child, he thought of Li Qianxue, who was still asleep because she had given birth to the child. A crazy and bold idea flashed through his mind. He didn't want to marry Li Qianxue, but he did. He wanted to marry Xiang Kaiping, but he could not. Li Qianxue, aren't you very capable? Isn't the Li family very powerful? If he took Li Qianxue's child away, what would happen to her? Old Master Li had been watching over his daughter. The child was in the nursery. The right time, the right place, and the right people were cooperating with Su Qinghui. He finally made up his mind. He carried Xiang Kaiping's daughter into the nursery and took Li Qianxue's baby away. In fact, he had thought of even more ruthless ideas. It was to send Li Qianxue's child to the orphanage. He wanted Li Qianxue to regret it, but when he held the baby girl, he hesitated for a moment. No matter how much he disliked Li Qianxue, no matter how much he hated her, this child was still his. In the end, Li Qianxue's child was not sent to the orphanage. He asked someone to take care of him, and hired someone to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Li Qianxue woke up the next day. The first thing she did after waking up was to see her daughter. Before he could name the child, old Master Li had given her a name, Peixian. Everything was a foregone conclusion. He had done a perfect job of stealing the dragon and changing the phoenix. A month later, he found an excuse to start a cold war with Li Qianxue. Then when she gave in, he carried Su Qingseng home. That was the darkest thought in his mind when he was young. Li Qianxue, aren't you arrogant? Li Qianxue, aren't you proud? I'll put your biological daughter in front of you and let you look at her every day. But you won't know her, and you won't recognize her. I want you to treat your own daughter as an illegitimate daughter. If you make things difficult for her, you will be making things difficult for your own daughter. In fact, there was a time when Su Qinghui really wanted to see Li Qianxue make things difficult for Su Qingseng. Unfortunately, Li Qianxue was a very proud person. She didn't want to make things difficult for someone she didn't like. At most, they would just ignore him. But this was enough. Su Qinghui watched as Li Qianxue ignored Su Qingseng. He watched as she was considerate to Su Peixian, but never gave Su Qingseng a good look. He finally felt a lot better after being forced to marry her. After venting his anger, he began to worry again for a while. He was worried that Su Peixian would look like Xiang Kaiping. He was worried that Su Qingseng would look like Li Qianxue. In that case, Li Qianxue would definitely be able to tell. That was because Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping did not look the same at all. The two of them did not look alike at all. However, it seemed that even the heavens were on his side. As Su Peijian grew up, she looked neither like him nor Li Qianxue. Instead, she looked more like Su Qinghui's deceased mother. Su Peijian's genes had been passed down through generations, so Su Peijian couldn't be found to be similar to them at all. At most, her eyebrows, eyes, and demeanor were vaguely similar to his. That was all. However, as Su Qingsang grew up, she looked more and more like him. Many times, when he looked at his two daughters, he could only sigh that this was really fate. Chapter 365. In the end, Su Qinghui's worries became less and less as time went by. In the past few years, they had completely disappeared without a trace. He enjoyed the result, and the fact that Li Qianxue was kept in the dark and ignorant. He was waiting. He wanted to live longer than Li Qianxue. One day, when Li Qianxue was dying and about to leave this world, he would tell her that the daughter she had doted on for decades was actually born from the woman she hated the most. He would tell her that everything of the Li family finally fell on a child who was not Li Qianxue. He imagined the expression Li Qianxue might have, the reaction she might have, and the feeling of Li Qianxue dying with her eyes open. He felt that only then would he have a sense of accomplishment and revenge. However, Su Qinghui didn't expect that there would be such a big change in his revenge plan. First, Su Qingsang married Hu Jiniao, so that she, who could only live an ordinary life for the rest of her life, had a new opportunity. Second, Su Qingsang would meet Xiang Kaiping, and Xiang Kaiping would think that Su Qingsang was her daughter. Both of these things were beyond Su Qinghui's expectations. This was not what he wanted. It was not something he could have guessed. He had wanted to let it go. It didn't matter if it was a misunderstanding. Xiang Kaiping had nothing, and Su Qingsang was already with Hu Jiniao. Her appearance couldn't change anything. However, Su Qinghui didn't expect that Xiang Kaiping would hate Su Peijian. She even went against Su Peijian for Su Qingsang. This was definitely not what Su Qinghui wanted to see. He owed Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian was his daughter in the palm of his hand. How could he watch Xiang Kaiping make things difficult for her own daughter? Not to mention that if Li Qianxue came looking for Xiang Kaiping, he was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would hate Su Peijian even more. That was even more not what he wanted to see. He was obsessed and felt that Su Peijian was willing to give the best. No matter what, Li Qianxue should be good to Su Peijian. Xiang Kaiping should also be good to Su Peijian. That was the reason why he came looking for her in a hurry today. Others didn't know, but he knew very well that Su Qingsang was actually Li Qianxue's child. Su Peijian was Xiang Kaiping's daughter. Xiang Kaiping had slapped Su Peijian because of Su Qingsang. What would Xiang Kaiping think if she found out? Su Qinghui didn't know, and he didn't dare to think about it now. Things had gone out of control, and he wanted to tell Xiang Kaiping the truth. He was also worried that Xiang Kaiping would not believe or accept it. Perhaps he could try to persuade Xiang Kaiping to stay away from Su Peijian and avoid conflict with her. Su Qinghui thought for a long time and finally came up with an excuse. However, he didn't expect to see a happy family in front of him the moment he arrived. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping were like a real mother and daughter. The atmosphere between them was very harmonious. That was something Su Qinghui hadn't expected. He had been wondering if he should say something. Should I expose him? If he didn't say anything, Xiang Kaiping would always hate Peijian and get close to Qingsang, which was something he didn't want. However, if he really exposed the truth, would the harmony between Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang still exist? Most importantly, Xiang Kaiping wanted to be her daughter. If she knew that Su Qingsang wasn't her daughter, would she turn around and look for Su Peijian? Chapter 366. He had no way to punish Li Qianxue, nor could he avenge the humiliation he had suffered years ago. Su Qinghui had been in a dilemma. Xiang Kaiping wanted to kick him out, but he still hadn't figured out what to say. When her hand touched the door, and she was about to push him out, Su Qinghui lost his cool and blurted out the words, "Su Qingsang is not his daughter." Xiang Kaiping stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you say?" "I said, Su Qingsang isn't your daughter. You don't have to be so nice to her. You even hurt Peijian for her sake. You know Peijian is your real daughter." Before Su Qinghui could finish his sentence, Xiang Kaiping interrupted him. Su Qinghui. Xiang Kaiping hadn't expected that after more than 20 years, the gentleman in her memory would become like this. You don't even want to acknowledge your daughter, so that I won't cause trouble for Su Peijian? Kaiping, what are you talking about? Why didn't I acknowledge my daughter? You still deny it? Tell me, is Qingseng your daughter? Yes. Really? How do you know she is? Xiang Kaiping had never been so sharp. Her body was trembling, and her voice was almost cracking. The man she had loved, the only man she had ever loved. It wasn't just love. They had grown up together, almost like siblings. However, this man was such a man. In order to prevent her from hurting his precious daughter, in order to prevent his daughter from making things difficult for his legal wife's daughter, he could even find such a shameless reason? Get out! Xiang Kaiping was furious. She opened the door and was about to push Su Qinghui out. Kaiping, did you hear that, Qingseng? Before Su Qinghui could finish his sentence, he saw Su Qingseng and Hu Jinyao coming out of the elevator. He froze for a moment. The words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say them out. Xiang Kaiping was about to lose her temper when she saw Su Qingseng come back. She lowered her eyes and didn't want to say a word. Mom! What was going on? Why did she hear Su Qinghui mention her name? Su Qingseng looked back and forth between Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping. She blinked and turned to look at Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao shook his head at her without saying a word. However, his hand secretly squeezed her palm. Su Qingseng wanted to laugh, although it was not the right time. Looking at her parents, she cleared her throat. Mom, it's cold outside. Let's go in. The weather in Lin City was getting colder. Now that it was New Year's Day, it was indeed very cold to stay outside. Are you cold? Come in. Xiang Kaiping was anxious. She ignored Su Qinghui and walked past him to grab Su Qingsong's hand. Su Qingsong's hand was held by Xiang Kaiping. Contrary to Su Qingsong's cold hand, Xiang Kaiping's hand was very warm. Are you cold? Why don't you wear more clothes when you go out? It's my fault. Hu Jinyao followed her into the room. I should have gotten Qingseng some clothes. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I said I was afraid that you would be cold. Su Qingseng pointed at herself. Look, I'm wearing so many clothes. And you said your hands are so cold. My hands are like this. When it's cold, my hands and feet get cold. It has nothing to do with how many clothes I wear. That won't do. We'll find a traditional Chinese medicine doctor to take your pulse. We'll see how you can recuperate. Mom, I'm a doctor myself. Doctors don't treat themselves. Haven't you heard of it? Xiang Kaiping's love for her daughter increased. Chapter 367. Mom! Su Qingseng looked at the two of them with a confused look on her face. What was going on? The atmosphere was quite good when they were eating just now. Qingseng, it's getting late. You should rest early, take a hot shower, and soak your hands and feet in hot water. Xiang Kaiping didn't respond to Su Qingsong's look. She just held her hand and smiled gently. In addition to the gentleness, there was also self-blame, guilt and heartache. Those emotions were well concealed by Xiang Kaiping. All that could be seen was her gentleness and love at the moment. Mom! Su Qingseng was a little helpless and touched. I'm not a child anymore. Yes. You're not a child anymore. You still don't know how to take care of yourself. How could Su Qingseng know how to take care of herself? Without a biological mother by her side, having a biological father was as good as not having one. She didn't know how much she had been wrong since she was a child. Thinking of this, Xiang Kaiping was once again glad that she had come to Lin City. If she hadn't come, Su Qingseng would have suffered even more. Mom, don't worry. I'll take good care of Qingseng in the future. Hu Jinyao took the opportunity to show his sincerity. He stood next to Su Qingseng and put his big hand on her shoulder. Qingseng, don't you think so? His parents were still around, and he wasn't being proper again. Su Qingseng glared at him and moved her shoulder to the side without a trace. Hu Jinyao was very strong. How could Su Qingseng avoid him? He could tell that Su Qinghui was probably up to no good this time. Otherwise, Xiang Kaiping wouldn't look like that. He didn't know what Su Qinghui said to upset her. Maybe he could go back and check. Hu Jinyao's gaze fell on Su Qinghui. who had a somewhat complicated expression. Once again, a very strange feeling emerged in his heart. Xiang Kaiping looked at the loving and harmonious couple, and was happier than if she had eaten honey. You guys go and rest. I'll watch some TV. She was going to talk to Su Qinghui alone. Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang looked at each other, and turned to say goodbye to Su Qinghui together, before returning to the room. All of Su Qinghui's impulses just now disappeared when he saw Su Qingsang come back. A little impatience would spoil great plans. He couldn't say. Since her children were no longer around, Xiang Kaiping didn't want to pretend anymore. Su Qinghui, why don't you tell me that Qingsang is not my daughter? Whose daughter was that? Who is my daughter? Su Qinghui looked at the sharp expression on Xiang Kaiping's face. She was a gentle woman who used to have no opinions of her own. Because she had become a mother, she had also started to become sharper. She would show such a sharp side to him. Can't say it. Xiang Kaiping smiled coldly and nodded. Say it. You don't want me to make things difficult for Su Peijian, right? Yes. Su Qinghui closed his eyes. His heart was filled with bitterness, but his face was calm. Kaiping Peijian is a good girl. Next time, can you not make things difficult for her? If there was such a thing as the pain of having one's heart gouged out, and the agony of having one's heart dug out, Xiang Kaiping felt that it would be the same as now. Su Qinghui, Peijian is a good girl. Wasn't Qingsang the same? I can't make things difficult for Su Peijian, but your wife and daughter can make things difficult for my Qingsang, right? Su Qinghui opened his eyes and looked at her helplessly. I didn't mean that. Chapter 368. Su Qinghui clenched his fists tightly by his side. He looked at Xiang Kaiping and finally nodded. Okay, I'll go. He was free and easy, but his footsteps were very heavy when he turned around. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Su Qinghui had never doubted himself like this before. He had never denied himself like this before. His shoulders were full of helplessness. Xiang Kaiping saw it, but she didn't feel the slightest sympathy. Xiang Kaiping was even more determined than Su Qinghui. No one can bully my daughter. She would protect Su Qingsang well. She wouldn't let Su Qinghui or the Li family hurt her again. It was her fault in the past. It was her mistake that caused the current situation. From now on, she would protect Su Qingsang well. Su Qingsang entered the door and touched her nose. She wanted to eavesdrop on what her parents would say, but she didn't feel like it. She couldn't help but stick her ear to the door the moment the door was closed. Hua Jinyao smiled, and was about to open the door a little. Su Qingsang suddenly became nervous. Don't. It would be bad if they found out. If you want to hear it, just do it openly. In fact, he was a little curious about what Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping had to say. Shoo. Su Qingsang made a gesture and pressed her ear to the door. Hua Jinyao wanted to laugh, so he imitated her and pressed his ear to listen. However, the sound insulation of the door was too good. He couldn't hear what was said outside, but he saw Su Qingsang's beautiful neck and small earlobes. Along the back of her collar, he could see the smooth snow-white nape. That color made Hua Jinyao's eyes dim. He couldn't care less about eavesdropping on the conversation between his parents-in-law. He picked up Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang's body was suddenly suspended in the air, and she was startled. Hua Jinyao. What was he doing? She hadn't finished listening, although she didn't hear anything at all. Wife. Hua Jinyao carried her to the bedside in a few steps. You went to Japan for a week, right? How? Su Qingsang almost understood what he was going to do next. Only 6 days. Yes, that's a week. Hua Jinyao laid her body flat on the bed and lay down himself. Honey, we haven't had an in-depth conversation for a week. Su Qingsang looked into his eyes and suddenly felt hot. You, me what? Hua Jinyao kissed the tip of her nose as he spoke. Don't you know that communication is essential for a good relationship between a husband and wife? Especially deep communication. Now let's exchange some pointers. Hua Jinyao, call me husband. Hua Jinyao, call me husband. Hubby, I'm here. Honey, I'm here. Say it again. Hubby. The following conversation was indeed very in-depth. Su Qingsang was still a little tired when she got up in the morning. It was true that absence made the heart grow fonder, but it was also true that her physical strength could not keep up. Hua Jinyao got up early, but it was raining today, so he couldn't go outside to do morning exercises. He saw Su Qingseng as soon as she woke up. He pecked her on the cheek. Morning. Early? It was getting late. Su Qingseng just wanted to get up, but her waist softened and she lay back down. Hua Jinyao looked at her and wanted to laugh, but he didn't dare to really laugh. This wife was good at everything, but she was thin-skinned and had poor physical strength. Chapter 369. Su Qingseng pushed his hand away. How could she be fine? Stay away from me. I'll be fine. That won't do. When he met her coquettish eyes, he smiled, revealing his white teeth. Su Qingseng gritted her teeth. What are you laughing at? White teeth. Honey, I like to be near you. Hua Jinyao didn't forget to take advantage of her as he spoke. He wrapped his arms around her waist and said, Don't you know? Move, I want to get up. She still had to work today. He had rested for so long. When Su Qingseng got off the bed, she suddenly paused and said, By the way, I'll tell the director today. What? In fact, I mentioned it to the director before. I said that you wanted me to go to Rong City to develop my career. The director did not agree at the time. I'll talk to her again today and see what the director thinks. If it's possible, let's go to Rong City. He stood up and walked to Su Qingseng. Do you want to go to Rong City with me? Or do you want to avoid your father and your mother? Both. Although Su Qingseng was interrupted by Hua Jinyao yesterday, she didn't miss the sharp look on Xiang Saiping's face. You saw how my mother was. She couldn't communicate with my dad at all, let alone get along with him calmly. Although it was impossible for the two of them to be together now. If my dad kept pestering me like this, my mom would definitely feel very troubled. Since that's the case, why don't we separate them? At that time, they won't be able to see each other anymore. And I believe my mother's emotions will stabilize. Hua Jinyao nodded and said, Then you should ask your director. I'll talk to Cheng Xianyan and see which hospital you want to go to. There's no rush. We can talk about it when I get to Rong City, but I think we might have to take care of things in Lin City. All right. Whatever you say. Su Qingseng glanced at Hua Jinyao. She finally realized that he was almost unconditionally obedient to her when it came to these small matters. Looking at Hua Jinyao's handsome face, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Hua Jinyao, thank you. Hua Jinyao held her waist and kissed her lips again when she moved away, and deepened the kiss. It wasn't until Su Qingseng's legs turned to jelly, and she leaned into his arms that he finally let her go. This is the gift I want. Su Qingseng glared at him and quickly hid in the bathroom. The two of them walked out of the room hand in hand. Xiang Kaiping had already prepared breakfast. Recently, she was getting more and more familiar with this kind of thing. Morning, Mom. Morning, Mom. Good morning. Xiang Saiping's gaze fell on their hands, which were held together. The more she looked at this pair of children, the more satisfied she was. Qingseng, how was your rest yesterday? Do you want to take another day off? No need. Su Qingseng picked up the bowl of porridge in front of her. I'm not that weak. Besides, I've already taken a few days off. Your health is more important. Xiang Kaiping was worried about her daughter. No matter what, if you're really tired, stay at home and rest. Anyway, even if Qingseng didn't work, the money she had earned in the past was enough for her to use for the rest of her life. Mom, you'll spoil me rotten. My daughter. I want to spoil her. After yesterday, Xiang Kaiping had thought it through. Su Qinghui, if you like to spoil your own daughter, then go ahead. If you want to be good to your own daughter, then go ahead. Chapter 370. Hua Jinyao supported himself with one hand as he watched the interaction between the mother and daughter. The strange thought he had yesterday completely disappeared. He felt that this result was pretty good. Be it Su Qinghui or Li Qianxue. With him around, those people wouldn't be able to do anything. He sincerely hoped that the happy scene between the mother and daughter could continue. After Su Qingseng and Su Qingseng left, Xiang Kaiping cleared the dishes and cleaned the house. Sister Lu used to be the one who did all these things, but she couldn't stay idle and liked to do it herself. After cleaning, she knitted a sweater for a while. Her movements weren't slow, and the lower half of her body could be seen through the sweater. As she knitted, she thought about what to cook for her daughter and son-in-law today. Qingsang was a doctor. She worked very hard every day. In the evening, Hua Jinyao went to bed again. It wasn't that she was eavesdropping. She was a little upset after being provoked by Su Qinghui yesterday, but she was afraid that her daughter would overthink it. He thought he was going to talk to Su Qingsang, but he overheard it. Xiang Kaiping suddenly felt uncomfortable and walked back to her room without stopping. However, he was worried that Su Qingsang's body wouldn't be able to take it. The more she thought about it, the more restless she became. She put down her sweater, picked up her bag, and went out. As soon as she stepped into the elevator, another elevator opened. Li Qianxue walked out from inside. His expression did not look too good. Her daughter Su Peijian was her flesh and blood. She and Su Qinghui's married life could be said to be as respectful as ice. After Su Peijian was born, Su Qinghui loved his daughter dearly even though he didn't like her. Not only him, but old Master Li, and she also cherished this daughter of theirs. But now her daughter had been slapped in the face. The one who hit her was one of the people she hated the most. No, perhaps he was the only one. Li Qianxue thought of Xiang Kaiping from many years ago. She was delicate and pale just like Sister Lin. She didn't like this kind of woman. She liked Su Qinghui and fell in love with him. In the end, Li Qianxue closed her eyes and gestured for her assistant to knock on the door. The assistant knocked on the door, but there was no response. Li Qianxue furrowed her brows tightly. She had never been to this place before. She knew that Su Qinghui had given her this house when Su Qingsang was 18 years old. She didn't care about the small amount of money needed to buy a house. But now, the house that Su Qinghui had bought had been given to Su Qingsang, and now that woman was living in it. What was this? Keeping a mistress in his house? GM Li, there's no one. Li Qianxue looked at the tightly shut door with an unfriendly expression. She thought for a moment and said, "Let's go." Did Xiang Kaiping know that he was coming? Is that why he went into hiding? Xiang Kaiping could hide, but Su Qingsang couldn't. Su Peijian entered Su Qinghui's office early in the morning. Su Qinghui didn't come home yesterday. She couldn't find him in the morning. Dad. When Su Peijian saw Su Qinghui, she rushed up to him without hesitation. Why didn't you go home yesterday? Old Master Li had asked Su Qinghui what he had been up to this morning. Li Qianxue's expression was a little ugly at the time, but she still said that there was a project in the company, and Su Qinghui had been very busy recently. Did you go to see Su Qingsang yesterday? Did you see her mother? Did you stand up for me? The series of questions gave Su Qinghui a headache. He didn't go home yesterday, but rested in the office lounge for the night. Chapter 371. Even when he was asleep, he kept dreaming. In the dream, he regretted that he should not have swapped the two children in the first place. Then, he dreamed that many years later, Xiang Kaiping found out that he had swapped the children. Not only was she unhappy, but she also blamed him. Finally, he dreamed of Li Qianxue. The moment she found out that he had swapped her daughter, she almost went crazy. Then, he woke up from the nightmare of Li Qianxue stabbing him with a knife. After waking up, the overly realistic dream made him have no doubt that one day he would really encounter that kind of thing, that he would really go to that day. Dad. Seeing that Su Qinghui was distracted again, Su Peijian was very displeased. Say something. Did you go to the mother and daughter to get even with them? Peijian, don't be stubborn. With that dream, Su Qinghui had decided that he must not let anyone know that the two children had been swapped. Right now, he wanted Su Peijian to stop causing trouble for Su Qingsang. Our company has been working with Hua Jinyao recently. It's better for you not to cause trouble for Su Qingsang. Dad. Su Peijian couldn't believe what she heard. What do you mean? Are you saying that in your heart, the company's business is more important than me? That's not what I mean. Su Qinghui rubbed between his eyebrows. He spoiled this daughter too much. Unknowingly, he spoiled her a little too much. Looking at her, and then at Su Qingsang, he couldn't imagine how Xiang Kaiping would react when she found out about the truth. Peijian. Su Qinghui's voice had a rare trace of fatigue. In my heart, you are the most important. Whether it is the company or Su Qingsang, they can't compare to you. I don't want you to go to Su Qingsang, because I don't think it is necessary. Secondly, Su Qingsang is now under Hua Jinyao's protection. If we go against the Hua family, we will not be able to gain any advantage. Are we just going to let it go? Su Peijian couldn't take it. Of course not. Su Qinghui got up and walked to Su Peijian. He held her shoulders and said, Peijian, believe me. In this world, it is not about who gets the advantage first who wins. The one who laughs last will be the winner. Su Peijian saw the seriousness in her father's eyes and suddenly nodded. Dad, do you mean that you've already thought of a way to deal with Su Qingsang and her mother? Of course. Su Qinghui skipped over the words mother and daughter, and finally stopped regretting his choice. Peijian believes in Dad. You are the one who wins in the end. Okay. Su Peijian was relieved to hear that. I believe you, Dad. Since Su Qinghui had said so, she would wait and see Su Qingsang suffer. As soon as Su Qingsang entered the department, she gave out the gifts for the director and the doctors. In the past few months of her marriage, she would go to Rong City one day and Japan the next. The number of times he took leave was more than the previous few years. In fact, he was quite embarrassed. Fortunately, Zhang Qiubai was a very good person. Chen Xiaoyu was also a very good person. The two chief physicians were nice people, and so were the other doctors and nurses in the department. Su Qingsang got busy after the gift was sent out. At the end of the year, there were more people getting married and giving birth. Su Qingsang, who had rested for a few days, immediately threw herself into work and was very busy. During the time she was in Japan, the obstetrics and gynecology department received several pregnant women who were about to give birth. 2 of them had other diseases that required special attention. Chapter 372. It was already late winter in Lin City, and the temperature was slightly low. There were either patients or doctors and nurses hurrying past the corridor. Compared to them, Li Qianxue was the most eye-catching one. Li Qianxue was wearing a white woolen coat. Her long hair was tied up behind her head. Her makeup was exquisite, and her facial features were bright. She looked to be in her early 30s. Even if she walked quickly, her steps were very elegant. In the past, Li Qianxue was the model lady of the entire upper class of Lin City. Because no matter when he saw her, no matter where he saw her, she always had an elegant look on her face. However, at this time, her expression was not very good. No, it should be said that she did not want to be good. While Su Qingsang was thinking about whether she could avoid it, Li Qianxue had already seen her. Not only did she see her, but she also walked straight toward her. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. If it was a blessing, it would not be a curse. If it was a curse, she could not avoid it. Li Qianxue was self-conscious, and it was unlikely that she would cause trouble here. Su Qingsang thought for a moment, and took a few steps forward to greet her. Auntie, are you here for me? Li Qianxue stood still and glanced at Su Qingsang. She was wearing a white coat, and had a face that looked very similar to Su Qinghui's when he was young. She felt uncomfortable when she saw this face. It was quite uncomfortable. Her daughter did not look like Su Qinghui, nor did she look like herself. However, Xiang Xiping's daughter looked very much like Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue's hand that was holding the bag slightly tightened, and her expression was a little ugly. Auntie. After all, Su Qingsang had lived in the Li family for so many years, so she naturally knew that Li Qianxue did not like her. Come in and talk. Her office was just above, and she didn't have her own office. She was with other doctors. However, they should not be in the office at this time. Bringing Li Qianxue back to her office, Su Qingsang looked at the environment in front of her. Sit down. Su Qingsang watched Li Qianxue enter the door, but let the assistant guard the door. She sighed in her heart. Auntie, do you want some water? After asking, she felt a little silly. Li Qianxue did not come to drink water today. No, I'm not here to drink water. Li Qianxue's face was cold, and her tone was also cold. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She seemed to have just remembered that Li Qianxue never drank pure water from outside. What can I do for you, Auntie? Su Qingsang didn't dare to joke with Li Qianxue. That was courting death. Li Qianxue pursed her lips even tighter when she saw Su Qingsang's uncomfortable expression. To be honest, she really didn't like Su Qingsang. However, no matter how much she disliked her, she would not go so far as to make things difficult for her. After all, she did not want to involve the next generation in the matters of the previous generation. However, the older Su Qingsang got, the more she looked like Su Qinghui, which made her hate her even more. Thinking of this, Li Qianshue's expression became more and more unpleasant. I heard that you went to Japan some time ago? The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded slightly, her voice strangely lacking in confidence. You went with your mother? Li Qianxue took a step forward. Yes. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid of Li Qianxue, but maybe it was because the past few years had left a deep impression on her that she was a little afraid of her. You met Peijin in Japan? Li Qianxue took another step forward. Yes. Su Peijin must have told Li Qianxue about being beaten. Chapter 373. Su Qingsang actually felt a little emotional. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue stood up for Su Peijin when she was beaten up. Su Qingsang had never experienced the feeling of being loved by her parents before. Now that she had experienced it, she felt that Su Peijin was really lucky. Your mother hit Peijin? Li Qianxue continued to take a step forward. She was already standing in front of Su Qingsang. The distance between the two of them was less than 20 centimeters. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable and took a step back. Your mother hit Peijin? When Li Qianxue said this, her gaze was already quite sharp. Auntie, you can't blame my mother for this. The situation at that time. I'm asking you, am I right? Li Qianxue wasn't here to listen to an explanation today. She just wanted an answer. Did your mother make a move? Su Qingsang couldn't refute that. She nodded and said, yes. Li Qianshue's face darkened. She raised her hand and slapped Su Qingsang's face. Su Qingsang didn't expect Li Qianxue, who had always been arrogant, to hit her. She didn't want to be hit. Just as her hand was about to fall, he stretched out his hand to block it without thinking. Li Qianxue didn't expect Su Qingsang to dare to block it. The anger on her face grew. Su Qingsang, Auntie. Su Qingsang was a little scared. Like Hu Jinniao, Li Qianxue had been in a high position for a long time, so she had an imposing manner. Moreover, she was already a little afraid of her. He wasn't confident that he would be able to stop her hand from hitting him. Auntie, as the saying goes, a mother's debts must be paid by her daughter. I can't stop you from hitting me today to avenge Su Peijin, but if you hit me today, and I go to work with a palm print, I'm afraid it won't be good. What does it have to do with me? Li Qianxue tried to pull her hand out, but Su Qingsang held her back tightly. Li Qianxue lived like a princess. When she went out, she didn't have to carry heavy things. She even had someone carry her bag for her. However, Su Qingsang was a doctor. When she was short of hands, she had to lift the bed, help to send the patients, and perform consecutive operations. How could Li Qianxue defeat her? Su Qingsang, let go of me. Li Qianxue was determined to teach Su Qingsang a lesson today. If her mother dared to lay a hand on Su Peijin, then don't blame her for doing the same to Su Qingsang. Auntie, if I let go, would I let you hit me? Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. Auntie, please be reasonable. Your mother is the one who did it? You want me to reason with you? Li Qianxue sneered. Su Qingsang, how shameless do you think you are? Auntie. Su Qingsang took a deep breath and retorted. I'm not shameless enough. He didn't think much of it. In fact, I can understand why you want to beat me up for Su Peijin. However, Hu Jinniao was very protective. If you slap me today, I don't care. I'll take it. But I can't guarantee that he will do anything. Are you threatening me? It was rare for Li Qianxue to be angered by her. Her tone lost its usual calmness. It doesn't count. I'm just telling you that it won't do you any good. Su Qingsang saw that Li Qianxue was angry. She let go of her hand, took a step back, and stood further away from Li Qianxue. Auntie, Su Peijin only said that my mother hit her. I don't think she said anything nasty, right? Li Qianshue's face was cold. Her hand was hurting from Su Qingsang's grip just now. She moved her wrist and felt that she couldn't take it anymore. Su Peijian scolded me, and it was very nasty. At that time, my mother was also anxious to stand up for me, so she hit me, just like you did today. My mother hit Su Peijian, and you rushed over to stand up for her. What if you hit me? If I was hit by you, would my mother be anxious to find trouble with Su Peijian again and stand up for me? You. Li Qinshua's face became more and more ugly. Auntie, both sides are responsible for this matter. Why don't we each take a step back? You don't care about my mother hitting Su Peijian. I will also hide this matter from my mother. What do you think? What right do you have to negotiate with me? I really don't have the right to negotiate with you. Su Qingsang nodded, and her voice was much softer than before. I just want to tell you a fact. What you do is not good for you. If you vent your anger on me, my mother will look for you or Su Peijian. You can indeed not be afraid, but in this way, it will increase the chances of my mother appearing in front of my father. I don't think this is what you want to see, right? Li Qinshuo was stunned for a moment. She thought of Xiang Saiping's delicate face when she was young, but it always made Su Qinghui feel pity for her. The anger in her heart turned into hatred. Of course, she didn't want to see Su Qinghui looking for Xiang Kaiping again and again. She had been unable to compete with that woman for so many years. Even when Su Qinghui was in front of her, his heart was still thinking about that woman. Now that that woman was back, Su Qinghui's soul would probably be taken away by Xiang Kaiping. Thinking of this, she became more and more angry and hateful. Looking at Su Qingsang's face, she felt that she was getting more and more annoyed. Su Qingsang naturally noticed the change in her expression. She knew that something was wrong, but she could only think of a way to continue comforting her. Auntie, in fact, I don't have a grudge against you, and neither does my mother. It wasn't my mother who brought me back to the Su family, but my father. If you want to hate me, you should look for my father, not my mother. Seeing that Li Qinshua's expression didn't change, Su Qingsang continued. Auntie, what do you think about this? You can forget about this matter and never mention it again. I promise. I will make sure that my mother will never appear in front of my father again. What can you guarantee? It wasn't that Li Qinshuo didn't believe Su Qingsang, but she didn't believe Su Qinghui. If he knew that that woman was back, she was afraid that he wouldn't be able to sit still. Don't think that she didn't know where Su Qinghui went yesterday. Didn't he go to look for Xiang Kaiping? He didn't come back for a whole night. Who knew what he did outside? Did he do anything wrong? And that Xiang Kaiping hadn't seen Su Qinghui for so long. Now that she saw him again, wasn't it dry wood or fire? Every time Li Qinshuo thought of this, she felt that her gums began to hurt. What can you guarantee? What right do you have to guarantee? Su Qingsang sighed. It was a decision that she had made before, but at this moment, it only strengthened her determination. Auntie, you should know that Hu Jinyao is from Rong City. In fact, my mother has been living in Rong City before. In fact, Hu Jinyao has asked me more than once to go to Rong City with him to develop my career, but I was not very willing at that time. Chapter 374. Su Qingsang's tone was quite sincere. She repeatedly promised that she and Xiang Kaiping would stay away from Lin City. Li Qinshuo looked at her expression and knew that she was telling the truth. She stood there without moving and stared at Su Qingsang with her sharp almond-shaped eyes. What she said made some sense, but only to a certain extent. You said that you weren't willing before. Why are you willing now? Do you think that I will believe you after you say that? How do I know that if I let you go now, you won't turn around and find Hu Jinyao or your father to help you? Auntie, if I want to find them, I can find them now. If I don't want to go to Rong City, I can tell you now. You can find out the truth later. After all, you can find out where I am, and whether I am in Lin City or not. Isn't that right? Li Qinshuo was silent. In fact, she really didn't like Su Qingsang. Her existence was like a thorn, reminding her how Su Qinghui became her husband. It constantly reminded her that her man didn't love her, but other women. Closing her eyes, Li Qinshuo felt her heart palpitate, and her face was a little pale. She was less than 50 years old, but she already liked to reminisce about the past. In her dreams at night, she asked herself over and over again, whether she would make the same choice if she could start over again. Unfortunately, there was no answer because time could never be repeated. She didn't speak, and Su Qingsang didn't know what she meant. Was she going to let it go like this? In fact, if Li Qianxue really wanted to hit her today, she wouldn't be surprised. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang. She hated Su Qingsang as much as she loved Su Qinghui. But no matter how much she hated Su Qingsang, she had to admit, for more than 20 years, they had neglected her. But they didn't let her go astray. Not only did she not go astray, professional aside, Li Qianxue was even willing to admit that Su Qingsang was excellent. Although in her heart, there was still a gap between such excellence and her own daughter. After all, Su Peijian had been in the company for a long time, and helped her deal with business. There was some silence in the office. Su Qingsang looked at the time. She seemed to have a meeting in the department. Junior sister? There was a knock on the door. Zhou Hongchen's voice came from outside. Su Qingsang paused for a moment and smiled at Li Qianxue. Auntie, I'll open the door. Li Qianxue stood still, and Su Qingsang ran to open the door. Outside the door, Li Qianxue's assistant still wanted to stop Zhou Hongchen. It was also because there was an assistant standing there that Zhou Hongchen, who was originally just passing by, was allowed to come in to take a look. Junior Marshall's sister. Are you okay? Zhou Hongchen looked at the assistant, then at Li Qianxue. He felt that Li Qianxue looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who she was. You're Mr. Zhu's son? Li Qianxue recognized Zhou Hongchen immediately. Mr. Zhou and old Master Li were close friends, and they got along well. When they were free, they would go fishing or play chess together. Yes, Zhou Hongchen recognized Li Qianxue. So it's Auntie Li. Hello, Auntie Li. I didn't expect you to be so big already. Li Qianxue looked at him, and then at Su Qingsang. Zhou Hongchen called Su Qingsang Junior Marshall's sister? Zhou Hongchen recognized Li Qianxue and knew who she was. He then looked at Su Qingsang. Even if he was worried that she would be taken advantage of, he couldn't say it out loud. Junior Marshall's sister? Didn't you say you had something for me? Something? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment, then suddenly nodded. Yes. Wait a moment. Su Qingsang bought a lot of gifts when she went to Japan. Other than for the people in the department, she also gave a gift to Zhou Hongchen. She turned to her desk, opened the drawer, and took out a beautifully wrapped box. Senior Marshall brother here. I went to Japan a few days ago, and this is a small gift. I hope you don't mind. Why would I mind if it's a gift from you? Zhou Hongchen took the box from her hand. Even though he knew that Su Qingsang only treated him as a classmate, he was still happy and excited. Thank you. You're too kind. Su Qingsang smiled. Did you come here to get a bracelet? Of course not. Zhou Hongchen thought about the notice from the hospital. I have something else to tell you. What is it? As you know, we have a collaboration with Song City's Central Hospital. They will be conducting some medical research during this period, including topics that you are interested in. I have already recommended you to the hospital. You can go to Song City as an exchange doctor. Really? Su Qingsang was suddenly excited. When will you be going? How long will you be gone? About half a month. Zhou Hongchen glanced at Su Qingsang as he spoke. Don't rush to decide. After all, you have to know that it will be almost the new year when you come back. Su Qingsang was stunned. She suddenly remembered that she was married. She should have told Hu Jinyao first before going to Song City. Okay, I got it. Think about it. If there are no problems, submit your name tomorrow. Ultimately, it depends on your own will. Okay, thank you. Senior Marshall brother. You don't have to be so polite with me. Zhou Hongchen raised the box in his hand as he spoke. Speaking of which, I should thank you. After he finished speaking, he looked at Li Qianxue, who was still standing at the side. Auntie Li still has something to tell you, right? Then I'll leave first. Su Qingsang nodded, but she was secretly relieved. She had observed Li Qianxue for the past few years, and found that she cared about her reputation. She probably wouldn't act like she had just now. Zhou Hongchen left, and the assistant closed the door again. Now it was just the two of them again. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. When she met Li Qianxue's sharp gaze, She really felt that she couldn't stand it anymore. Auntie, don't you have to work today? Li Qianxue glanced at Su Qingseng coldly, feeling inexplicably annoyed and disgusted. Don't you still have your father in the company? Don't worry, it's just one day away. The Li Corporation won't collapse. Su Qingseng couldn't respond to this, but she knew that Li Qianxue was obviously still angry. Su Qingseng sighed in her heart and spoke again. Auntie, I promise that I will bring my mother back to Rong City with Hu Jinniao as soon as possible. Back to Rong City? Li Qianxue snorted coldly. Your senior marshal brother just said that he wants you to go on an exchange program. What? You don't want such an opportunity? Su Qingseng was speechless for a moment. She suddenly found that she didn't know how to respond to Li Qianxue's provocation. She wasn't that afraid of Su Qinghui, but she was afraid of Li Qianxue. She was always a little afraid of her. Chapter 375. Even so, Su Qingseng still tried to persuade her. You heard it. It would only take half a month. It just so happens that it's time for the new year. We'll leave at that time. Li Qianxue had already planned to leave. She was indeed a little impulsive today. In fact, she shouldn't have come here to find Su Qingseng at all. She shouldn't have come here to do such a disgraceful thing. But now, looking at Su Qingseng's expression, she felt inexplicably annoyed. Look, you said that you would leave immediately. But now you want to wait for another half a month? Does that mean that after half a month, you can say that you will stay here for the new year? Auntie, I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Half a month is enough for your father and your mother to rekindle their old love, right? When Li Qianxue said the words rekindled old love, her voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. Su Qingseng trembled at the way she gritted her teeth. Without thinking, she said, Auntie, you think too much. It's impossible for my mom and dad to be together now. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She didn't believe Su Qingseng at all. Su Qingseng sighed in her heart. She found that she had sighed more often today than she had in the past year. Auntie, I know you don't believe me, and it's hard for you to believe me. I also know that you don't like my mom. It's hard to believe that my mom came back with no ulterior motives. But I still have to tell you that it's really impossible for my dad and mom to be together. You're not your mother. How can you make a promise for your mother? Li Qianxue couldn't help but want to refute her. It's true that I'm not my mother, but I can vouch for her. Because my mother is not only my father's past, she is also a mother. Su Qingseng had been watching from the sidelines for the past few days, and had seen through Xiang Saiping's thoughts. No matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now, she is still my mother. All these years, she had been alone in Rong City, and she had always thought that I was living a good life. Until she acknowledged me. Until she found out that I was an illegitimate daughter. Until she found out that my father had ignored me for so many years. Auntie, I'm not blaming anyone or blaming anyone. In fact, it's my mom who loves me. She doesn't want to be with my dad anymore. She blames my father. She hates him more than enough. How could she be willing to go back with my dad? She can't even forgive my dad. You didn't even want to talk to him. Auntie, actually, I don't need to lie to you about these things. I want to tell you that some things really aren't what you think they are. Anyway, believe it or not, it's impossible for my mom and dad to be together. Li Qianxue listened to her without saying a word. Finally, she sneered. Are you saying that you blame my family for not taking good care of you? Is that why your mother hates us? No wonder he tried to make things difficult for Su Peijian. Auntie, Su Qingseng felt a little helpless. Her main point wasn't this at all. I just said, I'm not blaming anyone. In fact, I don't blame anyone. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame fate. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame heaven's will. Now that she had grown up, she would not pursue the past. What's more, the wife and mistress were incompatible. She didn't want to get involved in the grudges of her previous life. It's good that there are no monsters. I don't think you have the right to blame me. There were many families with illegitimate daughters in Lin City. But which family would bring an illegitimate daughter into their own family to raise? How many people had secretly laughed at her because of this? How many grievances had she suffered because of Su Qinghui? Because of Xiang Kaiping. She had been ignored by Su Qinghui her whole life. Under such circumstances, she would be magnanimous if she didn't make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Not to mention that he had to get along well with her and treat her well. That was impossible. Hearing the arrogance in her voice, Su Qingsang nodded and said, "Yes. Yes, Auntie. I said it. I don't blame you. But please believe me. My mother neglected me in the past and didn't take good care of me. In the future, she will definitely take good care of me. So wherever I go, she will definitely go with me. As for me, Hu Jinyao is from Rong City. You don't have to worry about me not leaving." She spoke sincerely, and every word she said was reasonable. Li Qinshua looked at Su Qingsang for a long time. She didn't want to stay any longer, but she still said coldly, I'm not worried. I just hope that you will do what you say." In fact, she didn't want Su Qingsang to stay in Lin City and wander around under her nose. Now that she was willing to leave, she couldn't ask for more. Su Qingsang felt a little helpless because of her tone. Why didn't she see it before? Li Qinshua's coldness was so superficial. "Then Auntie, I have to go to a meeting. You see." Li Qinshua glared at her. Was she chasing her away? If it weren't for the sake of her daughter, did she think she would be willing to come to this place that smelled of disinfectant? Li Qinshua's expression was a little unfriendly. She turned around and walked out. Su Qingsang realized that her last sentence was not very appropriate. But she had already said it. When she went back to the desk to pick up the folder and notes, she suddenly saw the box on it. After thinking for a moment, she picked it up and handed it to Li Qinshuo the moment she opened the door. Auntie, this is a small souvenir I bought in Japan. It's for you." Li Qinshuo almost laughed at Su Qingsang's action. She glanced at the box with a bow on it. "You bought too much, didn't you? You can't give it out. For me. You want me to not pursue the matter of your mother?" Su Qingsang forced herself to calm down and said extremely calmly, "How could that be? It was originally for you. Really? I was planning to send it to the old mansion after work." Li Qinshuo looked at her draft, which didn't even lie. She sneered and didn't take the box. She glanced at the assistant. The assistant took the box with great sensitivity. Because of this small episode, Li Qinshuo, who was about to leave, stopped for a moment. "Su Qingsang, don't be petty in front of me. You will know that it was a mistake." "How could I?" Su Qingsang blinked and looked extremely sincere. "I really gave it to you with sincerity. Even if it wasn't, it could only be after what she did just now." Li Qinshuo didn't pay any more attention to her. She stepped on her high heels and left with a cold face. After she left, Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. It was really tiring to deal with someone like Li Qinshuo. However, she really had to think about it carefully. There was still nearly a month before the new year. She would go to Song City for an exchange for half a month. When she came back, she would pack up and settle things. Then, she would go to Rong City. Chapter 376. On the other end, Li Qinshuo arrived at the company late. The regular meeting had already ended. She, the vice president, wasn't there. Su Qinghui had handled these matters very well. Su Peijian called and said that she would have lunch with her at noon. Li Qinshuo hung up and asked the assistant to book a table. It was Su Peijian's favorite restaurant. When the assistant entered the door, he brought the box in. After finishing what Li Qinshuo had asked, he put the box on the desk. "Presidently this. Throw it away," Li Qinshuo said without looking up, as if she had just seen it. Her voice was too cold, and her tone was too firm. The assistant looked at the box and felt a little pity. However, he still picked it up. "Then I'll throw it away." "Throw it away. Remember to throw it far away." The assistant nodded and left with the box. Li Qinshuo looked at Su Peijian sitting in front of her. The wounds on her face were barely visible after being treated yesterday. Su Peijian majored in business administration. She was also involved in the recent cooperation with Tianyu Group. "Mom, weren't you at the meeting this morning? Where did you go? You didn't even answer my calls." Su Peijian asked casually, but Li Qinshuo's reaction stunned her. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Don't you have your dad?" Don't mention it. Su Peijian was actually a little dissatisfied with Su Qinghui. But only a little. There was nothing that she couldn't say to her mother. I asked my dad to vent his anger on that woman, but he refused. I'm actually very angry. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and frowned because of her words. Oh, your father actually refused to do it? Yes. Not only did he refuse, but he also told me that there was no need to settle the score with them now. He also said that we are now working with the Hua family. It would be bad if we offend Hua Jinyao. So what if it's Hua Jinyao? Thinking of this, Su Peijian felt a little annoyed. He's just from Rong City. He's famous. Why should we be afraid of him? Your dad has a point. Li Qianxue didn't continue to cause trouble for Su Qingsang today. Wasn't it because of Hua Jinyao? Mom, why do you say that too? Su Peijian was getting more and more annoyed. He glared at Li Qianxue, his face full of resentment. Peijian. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian. For now the bigger picture is more important. You should listen to your father first. Su Peijian looked unconvinced. However, thinking of what Su Qinghui had said, she relaxed a little. Forget it. Of course I listened to my dad. My father said that he has already thought of a way to deal with them. Really? Li Qianxue picked up the cup of tea in front of her and took a sip. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Su Peijian. Do you think your father has thought about how to deal with Su Qingsang and her mother? Yeah. Su Peijian didn't understand why Li Qianxue's expression had changed, but she still repeated what Su Qinghui had said that morning. My dad will definitely stand up for me. You should know that he has always loved me the most. Although Su Peijian still hadn't vented her anger, it had dissipated a lot. Moreover, Su Qinghui's promise made her even more proud. No matter what she believed in Su Qinghui, if he said he would take revenge for her, he would. She just needed to wait for Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping to be punished. Li Qianxue nodded. However, when she saw Su Peijian's face, she suddenly thought of what Su Qingsang had said to her today. She said, no matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now. She knows that my father has ignored me for so many years. My mother loves me so much that she can't even talk about being with my father anymore. She blames my father. She hates him so much. She can't even forgive my father. She doesn't even want to talk to him. Li Qianxue's hand, that was holding the cup, suddenly stopped. The thought that had flashed through his mind before came back to him again. The person Su Qinghui liked was Xiang Kaiping. She knew that very well. However, for so many years, he had been as cold to Su Qingsang as he could be. He ignored her as much as he could. On the contrary, he was quite good to Su Peijian. Almost like he was holding her in the palm of his hand. Even the patriarchal attitude that some people in Lin City had was not seen in him at all. Not to mention the fact that Su Qinghui didn't treat Su Yusen as well as Su Peijian did. Su Peijian had been at home for more than 10 years when she went to school. But what about Su Yusen? As soon as he entered high school, he was sent to boarding school by Su Qinghui. He could only come back once a week. At that time, she seemed to have objected, but she couldn't resist the reason Su Qinghui gave her. She said that boys needed to exercise. But what about Su Qinghui and Su Qingsang? He was even colder than Su Yusen. For so many years, she had never seen Su Qinghui smile at Su Qingsang, except for the routine greetings during Chinese New Year. Su Qinghui almost ignored Su Qingsang. If the person Su Qinghui loved was really Xiang Kaiping, then his reaction to Su Qingsang was a little too strange. At least a little too abnormal. That wasn't the attitude a man should have toward the woman he loved. Instead, it was like he was treating someone unrelated to him. Why did Su Qinghui treat Su Qingsang like this? You have to know that he has always loved me the most. Su Peijian's words just now appeared in her mind at the same time. Yes, the person Su Qinghui loved the most was Su Peijian, and the person he disliked the least was Su Qingsang. But thinking about it this way was completely unreasonable. Not only was it unreasonable, but it also made Li Qianxue, who had never seriously thought about this strange situation, more and more suspicious. It was not normal, it was very abnormal. There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. So if Su Qinghui treated Su Qingsang badly and Su Peijian well, then what was normal? Normally, Su Qinghui should be the one who treated Su Peijian well, and Su Qingsang well, right? Mom! She didn't speak, so Su Peijian called her. Li Qianxue didn't hear her. She was thinking about her question just now. Just what was wrong with this? She couldn't think of it at the moment. But the words between Su Qingsang and Su Peijian were like a replay, constantly going back and forth in her mind. The strange feeling that something was wrong came again. In a flash, Li Qianxue seemed to think of a key point. She just wanted to figure out that key point. Mom! Su Peijian called out even louder than before. Li Qianxue was shocked. Peijian! Mom, are you okay? When Su Peijian asked, she deliberately waved her hand in front of Li Qianxue. Chapter 377. Her thoughts had been interrupted, and she couldn't continue thinking. Seeing that Su Peijian still wanted to wake her up, Li Qianxue reached out and held her hand. It was rare that her tone was harsher than usual. How old are you? Why are you still so careless? I saw that you were ignoring me. Su Peijian pouted, obviously feeling a little wronged. Mom was thinking about something, and now you've interrupted me. Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Peijian couldn't control her curiosity. Tell me. You. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian again, and suddenly wanted to compare her with Su Qingsang. Speaking of which, Su Peijian was about the same age as Su Qingsang. Su Peijian was naturally prettier. But in terms of stability, Su Qingsang was much more stable than Su Peijian. She didn't know if it was because she and Su Qinghui had spoiled this child too much. Li Qianxue's heart suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She had spent so much effort to raise her daughter. In the end, she couldn't compare to Su Qingsang, an illegitimate daughter who grew up freely on her own. Wasn't this a slap to her face? Li Qianxue suddenly sat up straight. She looked at Su Peijian's face, and was momentarily lost in thought. So this was Su Qinghui's revenge? If this was Su Qinghui's revenge, then all his previous actions, those favoritism for Su Peijian, and his disregard for Su Qingsang could be explained. Overpraise? It was the most common method of wealthy families. Indulging their children. It made them arrogant and willful. In the end, they even caused a lot of trouble. Was Su Qinghui planning to do that? It was completely possible. Su Qinghui probably wanted to spoil Su Peijian and lead her in a bad direction. However, because there was still her and old Master Li at home, she couldn't let him get what he wanted. Even so, Su Peijian's personality was more arrogant than that of the other rich young ladies in Lin City. Li Qianxue had forgotten that she had wanted to spoil this daughter of hers. She had given birth to a child that she had carried in her womb for 10 months. Naturally, she couldn't pamper him enough. However, now that he had noticed Su Qinghui's actions, he seemed to have figured out what kind of sinister intentions he had. Su Qinghui, so that's what you're planning? What kind of plan was this? Mom, what happened to you? Su Peijian didn't have time to figure out why Li Qianxue had acted strangely just now. However, her expression made her a little worried. Mom, are you really okay? I'm fine. Li Qianxue didn't look well. When she thought of Su Qinghui, she naturally thought of what he had done. Li Qianxue felt a fire burning in her heart. She couldn't wait to rush to Su Qinghui and argue with him. However, Li Qianxue wasn't such an impulsive person. Moreover, she believed that she had seen through Su Qinghui's sinister intentions. How could she argue with him at this time? Peijian, speaking of which, you're not young anymore. There are some things that I think you should know your limits. Mom, Su Peijian was confused. Just talk about the conflict you had with that woman in Japan last time. I don't believe that you didn't say or do anything. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. Mom, why are you talking about me like that? It doesn't matter what I say about you. What matters is that you're mature now and have grown up. You can't deal with your circle of friends and social circles like you deal with business. Take Su Qingsang as an example. She is indeed someone we should avoid provoking now. Then the next time you see her, just ignore her. Of course, if she takes the initiative to bully you, you can naturally fight back. But if you take the initiative to provoke her, it will be easy for people to talk about you. Do you understand what I mean? Li Qianxue said sincerely. In her heart, she really hoped that her daughter could have a good personality and a good future. The engagement with the Qiu family was no longer valid. If Su Peijian wanted to marry better than the Qiu family, or be similar to the Qiu family, she had to restrain her personality. Mom, so you mean that I should tolerate Su Qingsang? Let her do what she wants. Why should I? Look at you, you're angry again. I mean, I want you to ignore her. If you ignore her, she won't be able to do anything. Don't you think so? Su Peijian didn't say anything. She looked at Li Qianxue's face. Her words were very similar to Su Qinghui's. She sighed in her heart. Okay, I got it. I'll just stay away from her next time. Is that okay? She knew that her daughter was still not convinced. Li Qianxue didn't say anything else. Anyway, Su Peijian would find out in the future. At this time, the waiter began to serve the dishes. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter and talked about the company again. The little bit of displeasure just now disappeared without a trace. The faint thought that she had almost been caught by her in a flash completely disappeared under her daughter's smiling face. However, everything today had become a temporarily hidden fire. She didn't know when it would burn up and illuminate all her doubts. After Su Qingsang came out of the shower, her eyes fell on the box on the dressing table. There was a layer of blue wrapping paper on the outside of the box. This time there was no tacky bow. It looked simple and clean. This was a gift she specially bought for Su Yusin. However, it wasn't the weekend yet. Su Yusin was still in school. She suddenly remembered that she had given the rest of her hand to Li Qianxue today. Li Qianxue would probably be so angry that she would want to throw it away. Thinking about it, it was a pity. However, when she thought about Li Qianxue's face at that time, she didn't feel that it was a pity. Instead, she felt happy. What are you thinking about? Smiling like a fox. Hua Jinyao was behind her and happened to see her giggle in the mirror. He reached out and easily pulled her small body into his arms. Nothing. Su Qingsang shook her head and decided not to tell Hua Jinyao that Li Qianxue went to find trouble with her today. Is it really nothing? Hua Jinyao put his hand on her waist, and the threat was obvious. Are you going to tell me or not? Su Qingsang raised her hands to surrender. She was really scared of Hua Jinyao. I was just thinking about when to send this to Su Yusin. This was not the truth, but Hua Jinyao didn't intend to expose it immediately. You can send it to him anytime. If it weren't for the fact that Su Yusin still had some sibling feelings for Su Qingsang, he wouldn't have let her send this gift. Hua Jinyao suddenly sat up straight and turned Su Qingsang's face to look at him. Honey, speaking of which, you went to Japan. You played with Mom for a few days. In such a short time, you brought gifts for the people in your department and Su Yusin. What about me? Where is my gift? Chapter 378. Su Qingsang was stunned by Hua Jinyao's words. She rubbed the tip of her nose and curled her lips awkwardly at Hua Jinyao. You don't lack anything. I don't know what to give you either. Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao was angered by her words. What do you mean I don't lack anything? Can you not give me anything just because I don't lack anything? Do the people in your department lack something? Does Su Yusin lack something? He was her husband after all. They should be closer than others, right? But what happened? Everyone had a gift, but he didn't. Only he didn't. Seeing that Hua Jinyao was really angry, Su Qingsang lowered her voice. That's different. How is it different? Their relationship with me is not the relationship I have with you. Hua Jinyao's face darkened because of her words. He didn't intend to let it go. What relationship do we have? Could it be that in your heart, your relationship with Su Yusin is closer than the relationship between you and me? If she dared to say that, Hua Jinyao would definitely punish her today and let her know that their relationship was much closer and deeper than Su Yusin's. I didn't mean that. Hua Jinyao got up and went back to the bed, looking like he didn't want to talk to her. Su Qingsang bit her lip and saw that he was really angry. She got up and sat down on the bed. She reached out to touch Hua Jinyao's arm, but he ignored her. He turned his back to her. Are you really angry? Yes. Very angry? Very angry. He had his back to her, so Su Qingsang couldn't see the expression on his face. After thinking about it, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Can you calm down now? No. Hua Jingyao said that, but his expression didn't change at all. Then what about this? Su Qingsang leaned over and kissed him on the lips again. Not yet. If Su Qingsang couldn't see that this person was doing it on purpose, then she would have spent all this time with him for nothing. Her red lips rose. She didn't kiss him again. Instead, she put her hand next to him and put one hand on his arm. I said that our relationship is different from theirs because I feel that our relationship is closer. Since it was a closer relationship, in that case, it would be the same with or without this gift. But they were different. My relationship with them can be strengthened by gifts. But I don't need it with you. If Hua Jingyao didn't turn around, he wouldn't know if he was appeased or not. I really didn't mean to ignore you, because I don't know what to give you. She didn't have much experience with men. The wallet, belt, and the like that were usually used by men. The ones Hua Jingyao used were custom-made. When she went to Japan to buy those for him, she was afraid that he wouldn't like them. I need it. I need it very much. Hua Jingyao didn't turn around. As long as it's from you. I want every blade of grass. Can I? Sure. What will you do if I really forget to buy you a present? What can we do? Anyway, I am very angry now. Very unhappy. Hua Jingyao didn't want to let it go. Su Qingsang looked at his back. She called him again, but he still didn't turn around. Su Qingsang looked down at the bathrobe she was wearing. She had been wearing a bathrobe since she took a shower. However, Hua Jingyao didn't notice that she didn't wear pajamas after taking a shower like before. She gritted her teeth, stood up, and left the bed. Hua Jingyao was angry with her. After coaxing her for so long, why didn't she coax him a little longer? He was angry. He decided to teach Su Qingsang a good lesson later. Let her know what a husband's power was. No, not just a lesson. He wanted. Hearing the rustling sound behind him. That woman still didn't know to come over? Hua Jingyao was angry. It was really infuriating to marry such a wooden wife. He sat up and was about to press Su Qingsang under his body to teach her a lesson, but he was shocked by the scene in front of him. Su Qingsang's bathrobe had been taken off by herself. Her clothes were exposed. That was, Hua Jingyao blinked and looked at Su Qingsang's head. She was dressed as a cat girl, and had a pair of cat ears on her head. She was obviously not used to this kind of outfit. She was very uncomfortable, and didn't know where to put her hands and feet. Actually, I also prepared a gift for you. It was the first time in Su Qingsang's life that she had done such a thing. She was really embarrassed. My gift is myself. Hua Jingyao, who had always been calm and collected, looked at the cute cat ears on Su Qingsang's head, and the fluffy cat tail behind her. Coupled with the outfit she was wearing, he suddenly got off the bed and carried Su Qingsang. This is your gift. Su Qingsang's face was as red as an apple. Her eyes wandered around, but she didn't dare to look at Hua Jingyao. When did you buy it? He didn't believe that she would dare to buy it with Xiang Kaiping accompanying her. Su Qingsang's face became even redder. Not only her face, but her whole body was covered with a layer of red. How could she tell him that she was shopping in Japan? Xiang Kaiping wanted to go to the bathroom, and Yumei took her there. She happened to see the lingerie shop next door, and the shop owner put the kitten outfit on the mannequin outside. Not only kittens, but there were also bunnies, nurses' uniforms, and so on in the shop. She thought of Hua Jingyao, and for some reason, she bought 2 sets of lingerie like that. Only this? Hua Jingyao put her on the bed and folded on top of her. Or do you have something else? Yes, there is something else. Su Qingsang's face became even redder. In fact, she had wanted to wear it for him when she came back last night. However, Su Qinghui suddenly appeared yesterday, and she forgot about it. What is it? Hua Jinyao's eyes were hot. He stared at the pair of golden kitten ears on Su Qingsang's head, and felt his heart itch. Rabbit ears. Su Qingsang didn't dare to look at Hua Jinyao's face at all. She really felt like her whole body was burning. Hua Jinyao lowered his head and kissed her lips. Wear it for me tomorrow. Su Qingsang nodded lightly. Hua Jinyao was satisfied. He kissed her cheek and moved closer to her ear. I like this gift. I like it very much. Su Qingsang was so embarrassed that her body curled up. She wanted to avoid Hu Jinyao's lips, but failed. Then, Hu Jinyao used his actions to prove to her how much he liked this gift. After midnight, Su Qingsang regretted it. She shouldn't have given this gift at all, because someone obviously liked it too much. He repeated in her ear over and over again how much he loved this gift. Over and over again, he told her how much he liked this gift. Chapter 379. Su Qingsang almost couldn't get up the next day after being disturbed by Hu Jinyao for most of the night. She gritted her teeth and wanted to find the rabbit set and throw it away before washing up. However, she couldn't find it anymore. She blushed. She didn't need to think to know who took it. For a moment she was angry, annoyed, regretful, and a little expectant. After washing up, she walked out of the room. Xiang Kaiping had already prepared breakfast. Qingsang, don't you need to go to work today? I need to go to work. I'll go after breakfast. Su Qingsang's waist was a little weak, and she looked a little embarrassed. In the past, she didn't feel it when she lived with Hu Jinyao alone. However, Xiang Kaiping was at home now, and Hu Jinyao still didn't know how to control himself. It made her really uncomfortable. As expected, during breakfast, Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang and wanted to say something. Mom, what's wrong? Su Qingsang thought that something was wrong. She wasn't there yesterday. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue wouldn't come to trouble her again, would they? Su Qingsang was a little worried. She was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would be at a disadvantage. Qingsang, don't be angry if I tell you. Xiang Kaiping's words made Su Qingsang nervous. Li Qianxue didn't teach her a lesson. Did they really come again? I know that you and Jinyao are young couples. It's inevitable that you are a little passionate, but you still have to control yourself. Su Qingsang blinked. When she realized what Xiang Kaiping said, she was suddenly embarrassed. Mom, don't be angry. I'm not blaming you. I just think that you still have to care about your health. Don't you think so? Xiang Kaiping was an experienced person. She could understand the young people's passion for each other. However, seeing that her daughter's health was obviously not good, she was really worried. Don't think too much. I don't want to interfere with your private affairs. I just think that Jinyao doesn't know how to control himself. She looked at Su Qingsang's walking posture and knew that she had a hard time yesterday. Her daughter had to go to work today. However, he really didn't know how to feel sorry for her. Mom. Su Qingsang tried her best to remain calm and tried her best to make her expression look normal. You're only saying this to me, aren't you? I also told Jinyao. Xiang Kaiping was not with Su Qingsang in the past. She felt sorry for her daughter. Now that he had recognized a daughter, he naturally wanted to pamper her and make up for the lost time. She was happy that Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao loved each other so much. But looking at Hu Jinyao's body, and then looking at Su Qingsang's petite figure, Hu Jinyao's heart skipped a beat. Xiang Kaiping's heart ached for her daughter. Mom. Su Qingsang was embarrassed. For an elder to say something like this, it was really. You don't have to feel embarrassed. Jinyao knew he was wrong. He promised me. Xiang Kaiping was actually a little embarrassed to say this. He always felt like he was pointing fingers at a young man. But if she didn't say it, she really couldn't help it. All right. Mom. I got it. Su Qingsang couldn't sit still anymore. She lowered her head and covered up the waves of discomfort by eating. Because of this, Su Qingsang forgot to tell him her plan. The next day, the people from the administrative office came to ask her about it. Zhua Hongchen reported her name, and the people from the administrative office asked if she was willing to go to Song City Central Hospital to participate in the exchange program. Of course, Su Qingsang was willing. She had been studying cervical cancer recently, and there was a doctor in Song City who was very experienced in this area. The departure time was 3 days later. Su Qingsang only remembered that she seemed to have forgotten to tell Hu Jinyao about it. Was this considered acting first and reporting later? Su Qingsang finally remembered to mention it when they were having dinner that night. I'll go for the exchange program for half a month. There is a Professor Wu in Song City, and I have always wanted to learn from her. Hua Jingyao and Xiang Kaiping looked at each other. Both of them were a little surprised by Su Qingsang's decision. Qingsang, I don't object to the exchange program. But why do we have to go to a place so far away from Song City? Song City was in another province, very far from Lin City. Although it was as developed as Lin City, it was still not as comfortable as being at home. Xiang Kaiping and her daughter had just gotten to know each other. She really couldn't bear to be separated for half a month. We have a collaboration with Song City Central Hospital, Su Qingsang explained very patiently. This time this opportunity is also very rare. Since the hospital has given me this opportunity, of course, I have to cherish it. Hua Jingyao didn't say anything. He knew how focused Su Qingsang was. She could ignore him for a week for the sake of a thesis or a research project. It was understandable that she wanted to go to Song City. But it will be the new year by the time you come back. Xiang Kaiping was still a little worried. If this time is delayed for a few days, won't you be able to come back in time for the new year? Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Qingsang wanted to laugh, but also felt a little sad. Mom, we said half a month, so it will be half a month. I will definitely come back in half a month. Besides, I still want to come back to spend the new year with you guys. Really? Of course. After saying this, Su Qingsang thought of her promise to Li Qianxue. She turned to look at Hua Jingyao. Shall we go to Rong City for the new year this year? Rong City? Hua Jingyao didn't say anything. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. Why are we going to Rong City? Mom, Jingyao is from Rong City. It is normal for us to go to Rong City for the new year. Besides, Mom, haven't you always been in Rong City? I also want to see where you used to live. Xiang Kaiping was a smart person. She immediately thought of the key point. Wanting to go to Rong City was not the real reason. She wanted to avoid Su Qinghui and his family, right? Hua Jingyao didn't say anything. When he heard Su Qingsang say this, he looked up at her and said, You will go to Rong City after the new year and not come back? You can say that. Su Qingsang nodded. Since she had promised Li Qianxue, of course she would do it. She was actually not afraid of a direct confrontation with Li Qianxue. And she didn't believe that Li Qianxue would really dare to do anything to her. After all, she still had Su Qinghui and Hua Jingyao. Moreover, Li Qianxue was an extremely prideful person. It wasn't her style to let go of her pride to deal with a little illegitimate daughter like her. After all these years, she and Li Qianxue could live in harmony. She knew that as long as she didn't step on Li Qianxue's bottom line, Li Qianxue wouldn't do anything to her. Since Su Qingsang had already made up her mind, the matter was settled. Su Qingsang would go to Song City for an exchange program. When she came back, the family would pack up and go to Rong City together. Xiang Kaiping didn't care. Wherever her daughter went, she would go. Chapter 380. Will you come back later? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang. Although she had only lived in this place for less than 2 months, she already felt a little reluctant to leave. Wasn't it nice to be here? Only his daughter and son-in-law, no other outsiders. If he went to Rong City, Hua Jingyao's family must be very rich. By then, would Su Qingsang really be able to handle those interpersonal relationships and things? How could living with her mother-in-law be as comfortable as living with her husband and wife outside? Mom, of course I have to come back. Su Qingsang had some things to pack. He also handed over his work in the hospital. More importantly, if she were to work in a hospital in Rong City, she would need a recommendation letter from the hospital here. She could rely on Hua Jingyao, but she preferred to rely on herself. She believed she had the ability. After dinner, she chatted with Xiang Kaiping for a while. That included where they would stay after they arrived at Rong City. Su Qingsang had already thought of how to settle them down. She was also afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel uncomfortable. He told her that he would definitely live with her in the future. Only then did Xiang Kaiping feel somewhat relieved. As long as she wasn't living with her mother-in-law, everything was fine. It wasn't that she looked down on her daughter. Indeed, in terms of status, she was much lower than Hua Jingyao. She was also afraid that her daughter would be at a disadvantage. Su Qingsang was touched by Xiang Kaiping's concern for her. After comforting her for a long time, she finally felt more at ease. Besides, there was still Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao also promised that he would not let Su Qingseng suffer. With his assurance, Xiang Kaiping could only put her mind at ease. The three of them chatted and laughed for a while before Xiang Kaiping dispelled all her worries. As soon as he returned to his room, Hua Jinyao's expression changed. He looked at Su Qingseng, his eyes full of wisdom. "What's wrong with you?" Su Qingseng felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Qingseng from head to toe. "Go ahead." "What?" Su Qingseng blinked. She didn't believe that Hua Jinyao could guess it. "Did the Su family cause you trouble?" Hua Jinyao hit the nail on the head. Su Qingseng almost couldn't hold back her laughter. "Nonsense, there's no such thing." "No." Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows. "You weren't this enthusiastic when I asked you to go to Rong City before." I'm just happy that it's almost the new year and I've recognized a mother." "Who?" Hua Jinyao thought of the Su family members. "Your father? Li Qianxue? Or Su Peijian? You're thinking too much." "I really didn't." Su Qingseng almost raised 3 fingers to swear. "I really didn't. Su Peijian suffered in Japan, so I don't think she'll bother you again. Su Qinghui had been here last time. Besides, he wouldn't go to the extent of finding trouble with you. That is Li Qianxue." Hua Jinyao took a step forward. His deep gaze was sharp and direct. "Li Qianxue looked for you?" Su Qingseng felt a little helpless. It was really not a good thing to have a husband who was too smart. "Why did she come to me? Even if she didn't come to find me, I would still go to Rong City. It really is her." Hua Jinyao had already gotten her answer. He looked Su Qingseng up and down. "Did she do it?" "No." Su Qingseng quickly denied it. "I really didn't. Why would a person like her hit me?" "She didn't hit you?" Hua Jinyao didn't believe it. "No, why would she look for you? You can't hide the fact that your mother is back. But I don't think your father would tell her. Even if she wanted to look for someone, she would look for your mother. Why did she look for you?" Su Qingseng began to feel a headache. "Hua Jinyao, you actually don't have to be so smart." Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes. "If you don't tell me, I'll ask our mother directly." "Don't. I'm really scared of you." Su Qingseng avoided the topic and didn't say that Li Qianxue hit her. She only said that she did come to find trouble with her. But there were many people in the hospital, and she promised her that she would go to Rong City in the future. "That's right. You see, I decided to go to Rong City. Didn't we agree before? I just went a little earlier." As Su Qingseng spoke, she held Hua Jinyao's hand. "Don't be angry. She didn't do anything to me. As for taking my mother to Rong City, even if she didn't say it, I would think so. After all, if my mother stayed in Lin City, she would run into my father's family." Hua Jinyao wasn't angry. He stared at the guilty look on her face. "You haven't told me why Li Qianxue came to look for you." Su Qingseng's eyes looked around, but she didn't look at Hua Jinyao. She didn't need to tell Hua Jinyao about the conflict with Su Peijian in Japan. Who knows? Maybe she knows that my mother is back. "Wife." Hua Jinyao squeezed her palm a little hard. "Do you know that you are really a bad liar?" "Really?" Su Qingseng blinked. "So I didn't lie." Hua Jinyao looked at her and let go. "Okay. I suddenly think it's better for me to ask our mother. I'll also tell your mother about Li Qianxue coming to look for you." "I don't think your mother knows, does she?" Su Qingseng was defeated by him. She quickly grabbed his hand and said, "Actually, it's really not a big deal." She hesitantly mentioned the conflict in Japan. "Actually, I wasn't injured, and I didn't suffer any losses. It's just that my mother was too impatient." She slapped Su Peijian in the face. Hua Jinyao's face was a little gloomy. He stared at Su Qingseng's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Su Qingseng begged for mercy. "Don't be like this. It's really nothing." She even got slapped in the face. Hua Jinyao still didn't speak. Su Qingseng felt more and more helpless. Look at her. Who dares to hit her since she was a child? My mother has already stood up for me. I didn't suffer any losses from Auntie, so let's just let it go, okay? Hua Jinyao looked at her face and understood what she meant. It was better to avoid trouble. However, she was willing to let it go, But he was not. Holding her hand, Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft. Wife, I hope you understand one thing. You are my wife. She's my wife. If others bully you, it's the same as bullying me. Next time you encounter something like this, don't care who they are. Just hit them back. Hua Jinyao, how could she be so violent? Even if you're at a disadvantage, if you can't beat them, it's okay. Come back and tell me. Su Qingseng looked at his serious eyes and the domineering tone in his words. She wanted to laugh, but also wanted to cry. Are you trying to instigate me to fight outside? No. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist. I want to tell you, when you encounter those who don't have eyes, don't be polite and don't be afraid. Don't let others bully you. Chapter 381. I know. Su Qingseng blushed a little and leaned against Hua Jinyao's chest. Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who will let myself suffer. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fought back when Li Qinxue came to her door. Really, Hua Jinyao didn't believe it. With her personality, she must have suffered a lot in the Su family in the past. Let bygones be bygones. Hua Jinyao would never let her suffer again in the future. Su Qingsong's face was pressed against his chest, and she smelled his clean masculine scent. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Su Qingseng thought of Li Qinshua's angry look yesterday. Actually, I fought back yesterday. She just didn't fight back clearly. Meeting Hua Jinyao's probing gaze, she told him about the gift she casually gave yesterday. She smiled a little proudly, like a little fox who had done something bad. She probably hasn't received such a casual gift in her life. Hua Jinyao imagined Li Qinshua's expression at that time and looked at Su Qingseng, who was laughing openly. He reached out and pinched her cheek. You also think it's funny, right? Su Qingseng stuck out her tongue. Can you not be angry now? He wasn't angry. He was just not happy that she was hiding something from him. Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft as he held her up. Still angry, very angry. If you want to, I won't be angry. Why don't you do something that won't make me angry? The pride on Su Qingsong's face suddenly disappeared. There's no need. What do you think? Hua Jinyao didn't intend to let her go just like that. The kitten has worn it. The bunny hasn't worn it yet. Try it today. Don't. Su Qingseng suddenly chickened out. My waist is still weak. Hua Jinyao glared at her and looked a little disgusted. You're so useless. It's not that I'm useless. The moment Su Qingsong's body hit the bed, her tone quickened. It's that you're too useful. Hua Jinyao supported his body with one hand and looked at Su Qingsong's pleading face. He thought of this morning. Xiang Kaiping asked him to control himself and said that Su Qingsong's body was weak and couldn't take it. Are you really tired? I'm really tired. Su Qingseng bit her lip and put on a look of negotiation. How about tomorrow? Hua Jinyao looked at her and didn't continue. Turning over, he lay down beside her. Su Qingseng was relieved. She couldn't help but look at him again and found that he was also looking at her. His eyes were deep and spirited, like the stars in the night sky. Su Qingseng had to admit that no matter how many times she saw him, she would always be captivated by his handsomeness. She propped her hand up, leaned over and kissed his eyes. Hua Jinyao lowered his voice. Don't seduce me. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep my promise. Su Qingseng stopped talking, made a zipping gesture, and quickly slipped down from the other side of the bed. I'm going to shower. Looking at the closed door of the bathroom, Hua Jinyao still had a fire burning in his body, but it had subsided a lot. He thought about what Su Qingseng had said. It was good to go to Rong City. Since there was still more than half a month's time, he could take advantage of this opportunity to arrange things here. He believed that if they were going back to Rong City, Grandpa would be very happy, right? Su Qingseng decided to go to Song City for the exchange program. There were also a lot of things to pack. The hospital let them go home one day in advance to pack their things. The plane to Song City was at 10 o'clock the next morning. They could go to the airport by themselves or go to the hospital. The hospital car would take them there. Su Qingseng was gone for half a month. Hua Jinyao, who had considerately let her rest for the night yesterday, didn't intend to endure it anymore today. He only let Su Qingsang go after torturing her for a long time. The next day, Su Qingsang couldn't open her eyes. It was Hu Jinyao who carried her. He knew that he had gone a little overboard yesterday. He carried her into the bathroom and helped her to wash up. Xiang Kaiping stood in the living room and watched Su Qingsang walk out with her suitcase in her hand. She wanted to say something but stopped. If Su Qingsang wasn't going for the exchange program, she would have followed her. Mom, I'm leaving. Did you bring enough clothes? Did you bring everything? How's the weather over there? Did you put an umbrella in your bag? What if it snows? Mom. Su Qingsang put her hand on her forehead. I brought enough. Song City is hotter than Lin City. I brought my umbrella. It won't snow over there. Don't worry. That's good, that's good. Xiang Kaiping was still worried. Take good care of yourself when you get there. Don't be too busy. No matter how hard I work, my health is more important. For so many years, Su Qingsang had always been alone, whether she was studying or going out. After marrying Hu Jinyao, he had become a person who did more than he said. This was the first time someone had nagged her about what she should pay attention to when she went out. She couldn't help but give Xiang Kaiping a hug. I'm not a kid anymore. Don't worry. I will take good care of myself. That's good. That's good. Xiang Kaiping repeated this sentence over and over again. He felt conflicted and gratified at the same time. Su Qingsang knew that if she wasn't at home, Xiang Kaiping's imagination would run wild. It was better to find something for her to do. Mom, didn't you say you knew how to make bacon and sausages? I think the weather in Lin City is quite good these days. If you have nothing to do, why don't you make something delicious? When I come back. Okay. Xiang Kaiping seemed to be suddenly energized. I know how to make bacon and sausages. I even know how to make beef jerky. If you like it, I'll make more. That's great. Su Qingsang blinked at Hu Jinyao as she spoke. Jinyao likes it very much too. Thank you. It's not hard at all. Xiang Kaiping wanted to do something for her daughter. How could she feel that it was hard? After sending Su Qingsang off, she began to think about what ingredients she wanted to buy. Speaking of which, she hadn't done it for many years. She was a little worried that she couldn't do it. Hu Jinyao helped Su Qingsang carry her luggage into the car and closed the door for her. Before starting the car, he glanced at her. You asked so much in one go. Aren't you afraid that your mother will tire herself out? Don't worry. She can't stay idle. I've already calculated everything. When I come back, she'll be almost done. Hu Jinyao smiled and reached out to rub the top of her head. You. Right. What do you mean by my mother? Isn't my mother your mother? Besides, my mother is tired. Don't you know how to remind her when you're at home? Su Qingsang blinked at him with obvious dissatisfaction in her eyes. Chapter 382. That's more like it. Su Qingsang smiled. When she smiled, the corners of her eyes were tinged with joy. Her facial features, which could only be considered beautiful, were particularly dazzling at this time. Hu Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Remember to miss me. Su Qingsang blinked and said, We'll see. I miss you whenever I have time. If I don't have time, I won't think about it. Hu Jinyao stepped on the accelerator, glanced at her, and said calmly, Don't worry. I have a way to make you miss me every day. Su Qingsang snorted with a look of disbelief. However, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. The winter sun outside the car window was just right. She stretched out her hand and watched as the light shone on her hand, dyeing it with a layer of gold. This kind of life was really good and blissful. She had a man she liked as her husband, and a mother who loved her dearly. If she could, she really wanted to be happy like this forever. She thought, I should be happy forever, right? Su Qingsang didn't know until she got on the plane. Other than her, Zhuangchen was also among the doctors participating in the exchange. When she got on the plane and saw Zhuangchen, her first reaction was to thank Hu Jinyao for not knowing. Her second reaction was, would Hu Jinyao be angry if he found out? It couldn't be, right? Even if he wanted to be angry. She's on the plane. That was it. Junior sister, you've come? When Zhuangchen saw Su Qingsang, He stood up and extended his hand to her. Come, I'll help you put your luggage on it. Thank you, Senior Brother Zhua. You're welcome. Zhua Hongchen was a man, so he easily picked up Su Qingsang's luggage and put it on the floor. Did you not rest well? The moment Su Qingsang sat down, she realized that not only was Zhua Hongchen there, but the two of them were sitting together. Was this really not arranged by Zhua Hongchen? As if sensing her confusion, Zhua Hongchen took the initiative to explain. When I found out about the exchange program, the first thing I did was to inform the administration and recommend you. Maybe it's because of this that our positions are together. It's okay. Su Qingsang waved her hand. It's okay to sit together. I happen to have a question to ask you. You're being too polite by saying that you're asking for advice. If you have any questions, just ask. Thank you, Senior Brother. Su Qingsang sat down. The rest of the journey became a medical exchange with Zhua Hongchen. As for the fact that Zhua Hongchen was going to the exchange program with her, there was no need to tell Hu Jinniao. Thinking of a certain someone's jealousy, the corners of Su Qingsang's mouth turned up, and she smiled happily. Zhua Hongchen had just returned from the bathroom and saw the smile on Su Qingsang's face. It was a smile that only appeared when he thought of his lover or lover. His expression darkened as he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, he was late. And Su Qingsang should be living a happy life, right? Xiang Kaiping had been busy ever since her daughter left. The sweater is almost finished. There were still 2 more sleeves to go. She wanted to finish it before her daughter came back. My daughter wants to eat sausages, bacon and beef jerky. That was not difficult. The weather in Lin City was good these days. She had already decided the sausage first. Hu Jinniao noticed that Xiang Kaiping seemed to be more energetic every day since she had something to do. The little impact caused by Su Qinghui's appearance seemed to have disappeared. He could not help but feel that no one knew their mother better than their daughter. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping had been mother and daughter for less than 2 months, but the mother-daughter relationship was already very deep. With the heart to busy herself for her daughter, he did not have to worry about Xiang Kaiping being bored. When he told Su Qingsang about this, she was half guilty and half touched. She really just said it casually, but Xiang Kaiping's positive attitude made her a little speechless. She secretly decided that when she returned to Lin City, she would treat Xiang Kaiping better. She had to treat her better. Xiang Kaiping treated Su Qingsang well, not because she wanted her to return the favor. She wanted to make up for the motherly love that had been missing for so many years. For the next week or so, Xiang Kaiping cured sausages, bacon and beef jerky, which were the special New Year products of Lin City. She also helped Su Qingsang knit the remaining 2 sleeves of the sweater. The white sweater looked very clean and refreshing. Xiang Kaiping also knitted a few mulberry leaves on the front of the sweater, and the crisscross lines looked very delicate. Xiang Kaiping finished knitting, but felt that something was missing. The sweater was not high-collared, and she was afraid that it would be cold when she went to Rong City. After thinking about it, Xiang Kaiping decided to buy some wool tomorrow and knit a scarf for Su Qingsang. Not only could she knit it for Su Qingsang, she could also give one to Hu Jinniao. During this period of time, Hu Jinniao had also been taking good care of her. Xiang Kaiping was not an ungrateful person. Hu Jinniao was very good to Su Qingsang, and he was also very good to her. She now not only treated Su Qingsang as her daughter, but also Hu Jinniao as her son-in-law. Knitting a scarf was easier, so she did it immediately. Xiang Kaiping went out early the next day. She went to buy wool. Lin City had changed a lot in more than 20 years. If Su Qingsang had not taken her to many places before, Xiang Kaiping might not have been able to recognize it. Xiang Kaiping planned to go home after buying the wool. When she passed by a very famous shopping mall in Lin City, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She saw a rather luxurious jade shop next to the mall, and there was an exhibition in the window of the shop. It was a jade Buddha. Men wore guanyin, and women wore Buddha. He recalled that his daughter was always in contact with patients and pregnant women in the hospital every day. He also had to run here and there to communicate with them. She wanted to buy this jade Buddha as a gift for her daughter. He entered the room. The shop was very big, and all the jade ornaments were arranged into several counters according to their types. There were jade bracelets, jade pendants, and jade ornaments. Xiang Kaiping glanced at it and walked directly to the counter where the jade pendant was sold. She asked the shop assistant to show her the jade Buddha. The shop assistant glanced at the clothes Xiang Kaiping was wearing and hesitated for a few seconds. "Auntie, this piece of jade is the treasure of our shop. It won't be cheap." Xiang Kaiping looked at the shop assistant from head to toe. However, he didn't get angry. "Miss, I'm old enough to be your mother. Do you think I'm here to tease you?" "Auntie, look at what you're saying. That's not what I meant." The shop assistant was a little embarrassed by Xiang Kaiping's words. She turned around reluctantly to take the jade Buddha statue. The jade Buddha statue was not very big. It was just a little bigger than a pigeon's egg. It was a two-faced Buddha. The Maitreya Bodhisattva's big belly could accommodate. This jade Buddha statue was indeed very good, both in terms of the carving skills and the quality of the jade. When she was looking at it, the shop assistant was very worried and put her hand on the counter. Later, she felt that she was being too obvious, so she cleared her throat. "Auntie, be careful when you carry it." Chapter 383. The shop assistant was surprised to see that Xiang Kaiping was serious. "Auntie, this piece of jade is an old pit jade. It's the king of jade in Myanmar. Back then this jade." "Little girl, just tell me how much it is." "Auntie, the price of this jade is 550,000 yuan. Our shop is now offering a 20% discount on jade wares. After the discount, it still costs 440,000 yuan." Xiang Kaiping frowned. "That's not a good price. 440,000. It was too unpleasant to hear. Ask your boss if he can sell it for 390,000. Forever and ever." To tell the truth, no matter how good the quality of this jade artifact was, there was still a certain amount of water in it. From her point of view, this jade Buddha should be around 300,000. "Auntie, look at what you're saying. We're such a big shop, and we don't specialize in your business. This was all at a discount. I can't go any lower after the discount." Xiang Kaiping looked conflicted. She really liked this piece of jade. He also felt that it was suitable for Qingseng. But 44 wasn't a good number, especially in the dialect of Lin City, for sounds the same as death. This made her even more displeased. The shop assistant sneered inwardly at Kaiping's reaction. What did he mean by 440,000 not sounding good? Wasn't it because he didn't have money? "Little girl, how about this? You ask your boss. Can you sell it?" Xiang Kaiping was not short of tens of thousands of dollars. However, she hoped that it would be a good omen for her daughter. Today, if this jade Buddha statue could be bought for 390,000 yuan, she would buy it. "Auntie, that's really impossible." The shop assistant didn't even want to ask. Now she finally realized that this woman had no money at all. If she really asked, the boss would scold her. "Little girl, you don't look like a businessman. You're not your boss. How do you know you can't buy it?" "Although I'm not the boss, I'm not the boss. But we have rules here." She would be a fool if she really went to ask. Xiang Kaiping's expression was a little ugly. She naturally knew that in places like this, people were picky and dismissive. But she didn't expect to encounter such a thing one day. "Little girl, I'm not leaving yet. Are you going to ask your boss?" "There's really no way to ask about this. If you don't like it, you can pay the original price of 560,000. I don't mind." "How can a little girl like you talk like that?" Xiang Kaiping was furious. "I've said it before. You're not your boss. You don't have the right to decide, do you?" "I don't. But I think I have the right to decide whether to ask the boss or not, right?" The shop assistant's face was cold, and he refused to go. The two were in a stalemate. Just then, Su Peijian walked in with a few noble ladies. Li Qianxue had a good friend whose birthday was next week. Li Qianxue had been very busy with work recently, so she asked Su Peijian to pick out a gift for her friend. When Su Peijian parked the car in front, she bumped into Luo Meishan's mother and Song Yoha's mother, who were also out shopping. Madame Luo and Madame Song had a good relationship with Li Qianxue. They naturally knew the people that Li Qianxue knew. It was Madame Luo and Madame Song's birthday the following week, Madame Luo and Madame Song also wanted to pick out a gift for Madame Luo. The three of them bumped into each other here. Su Peijian greeted the two aunties and suggested that they come to Bo Gu Zhai to take a look. Su Peijian saw Xiang Kaiping as soon as she entered the room. Seeing her, the old and new hatred from the last slap in the face came flooding back. Su Peijian almost couldn't keep the calm smile on her face. Peijian, what's wrong? Madame Luo looked at Su Peijian and followed her gaze. That's nothing, just a mistress. She said the last sentence so softly that the other two didn't hear it clearly. Su Peijian was a regular customer of Bo Gu Zhai. Not only her, but Madame Luo and Madame Song also came often. A shop assistant who already knew them quickly came up to them when she saw the three of them. Miss Su, Madame Luo, Madame Song. Their attitude toward Xiang Kaiping was completely different. The shop assistant smiled like a flower when she saw them. May I know what you are here to see today? Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to choose something. Instead, she looked in Xiang Kaiping's direction. What's going on over there? That. The shop assistant had heard it just now. Hearing Su Peijian's question, she told her what happened in a low voice. She obviously has no money, but she likes to pretend to have money. She's already paid more than 300,000 yuan, and she's reluctant to leave tens of thousands behind. She even wants us to call her boss. Don't you think that's infuriating? The shop assistant spoke softly. After all, even if Xiang Kaiping couldn't afford it, they couldn't openly offend a customer. Su Peijian snorted when she heard that, a hint of mockery appearing on her face. Madame Song and Madame Luo weren't interested in this matter, and were about to choose a gift. Su Peijian turned to look at the two madams. Auntie Song, Auntie Luo. I know this customer who can't afford it. Since she can't afford the tens of thousands, why don't I help her out? When she said this, there was a flash of malice in her eyes. Madame Luo and Madame Song didn't see it, but since Su Peijian said she knew the customer, they let her be. Peijian, why don't you go first? We'll wait for you here. Auntie, you two can accompany me. Su Peijian hooked her arm around Madame Luo's. I'm just a little girl. I'm afraid that the auntie will be embarrassed and reject my good intentions. This Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and didn't object. Not to mention that the Su family was the most famous family in Lin City. Just based on their relationship with Li Qianxue, they had no reason not to help her. Just like that, the two of them followed Su Peijian to Xiang Kaiping's side. Xiang Kaiping didn't have to buy this piece of jade. However, the shop assistant's attitude annoyed her. She had to see the owner of the jade today. Miss, when you're doing business, everyone is a customer. Since you're not the owner, how can you make decisions for your boss? This piece of jade is of good quality, but 300,000 is good enough. I'm offering 390,000, just to get a good start. If you really want to do business, go and ask your boss now. Can you sell it? Auntie, I've already said we can't sell it. Oh, Auntie, why? Are you buying jade? Su Peijian had seen enough. She took a few steps forward and stood next to Xiang Kaiping. She obviously didn't like Xiang Kaiping, but she still called her affectionately. It was as if they knew each other very well. What's going on? When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Peijian, she was a little unhappy. She took a step back, and her attitude was defensive and distant. Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. Please step aside. Chapter 384. While speaking, Su Peijian glanced at the shop assistant. Didn't you hear? Ask your boss to come here. Miss Su. The shop assistant treated Su Peijian with a completely different attitude. She bowed and said awkwardly, I'll go get him now. She didn't have to give face to Xiang Kaiping, who was obviously poor. But she had to give face to Su Peijian. Yes. In business, harmony makes money. Even if we can't afford it, there will be unreasonable people. We have to be nice. Don't you think so? Su Peijian seemed to be talking to the shop assistant, but she was actually looking at Xiang Kaiping. Her meaning was obvious. Don't buy it if you can't afford it. Don't look at it if you don't like it. Xiang Kaiping frowned. She really didn't like Su Peijian. Not only did she dislike her, But she also hated the girl when she thought of how Su Peijian had bullied Su Qingsang all these years. Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me. But Su Qingsang and I are sisters. I should care about her mother, don't you think? Care? Was she here to watch the show? Xiang Kaiping didn't believe that Su Peijian would be so kind. Auntie, actually, if you really can't afford it, it's okay. I'll buy it for you. After all, I don't care about a few 100,000 yuan. Su Peijian said it casually, as if a few 100,000 yuan was just a few dozen yuan. Xiang Kaiping didn't like Su Peijian's attitude. In fact, she didn't understand. How could a gentleman like Su Qinghui have a daughter like that? No need. I can afford it. Really? Su Peijian didn't believe it. In her opinion, even if Hu Jingyao was rich, he wouldn't spend it on Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, came from an ordinary family. It was impossible for her to be rich. How could she afford a jade pendant that was worth a few 100,000 yuan? Was that a joke? Auntie, are you sure? It's better not to be so prideful. Su Peijian turned to look at the jade Buddha. She had good taste. She looked up at the shop assistant and asked, "How much did you say it was?" "Miss Su, the original price of this jade is 550,000. For the new year, we are offering a 20% discount on all jade wares. After the 20% discount, it will be 440,000 yuan. 440,000? Su Peijian nodded and glanced at the jade Buddha statue. It's not expensive. Auntie, I'll see you off. There's no need. I don't want it. Xiang Kaiping had been in the mood to pick out a gift for her daughter. There was nothing left now. She turned to leave, but Su Peijian stepped forward and blocked her way. Auntie, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I already said that I bought it for you. Why are you leaving? Get out of my way. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian. Her expression had already darkened. Take a look. As Su Peijian spoke, she glanced at Madame Luo and Madame Song. I'm doing this out of kindness. Look, this gift can't even be given away. Don't you think it's strange? If Madame Luo and Madame Song still couldn't tell that Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping weren't on good terms, they would have lived for so many years in vain. Madame Luo rolled her eyes and stepped forward to stand next to Xiang Kaiping. Madame Peijian is a good girl. Since she said that she would give it to you, you should just accept it. Yes. Madame Song also stepped forward and stood on the other side of Xiang Kaiping. I think it's rare for you to see a piece of jade like this in your life. That was really unpleasant to hear. Xiang Kaiping was being held by two people, one on the left and one on the right. Her expression was already quite unpleasant. Su Peijian, what do you mean by this? Auntie, look, why are you so nervous? I've told you everything. What if you can't afford this jade pendant? I'll buy it for you. I'm doing my best for Qingsang. Su Peijian suddenly looked at Xiang Kaiping. Oh right. Why didn't Qingsang go shopping with you? Could it be that she didn't want to? Then I'll have to talk to her later. Don't go looking for her. From Xiang Kaiping's point of view, her daughter was the best. Stay away from her. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. She stood there and glared at Xiang Kaiping. She felt that this woman was really annoying. Auntie, look, that's not right. I'm Qingsang's sister. How can I stay away from her? Madame Luo and Madame Song heard this and understood everything. The two of them looked at each other and saw a hint of understanding in each other's eyes. Back then, Li Qinxue disregarded her status and married a poor boy. That was a well-known joke in the upper class. What was even more ridiculous was that the poor boy had a childhood sweetheart. That childhood sweetheart even gave birth to an illegitimate daughter for the poor boy. This matter had almost spread throughout the upper class of Lin City. Now, looking at Su Peijian's attitude, this woman was Su Qinghui's mistress back then? Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. It was normal for the mistress to be at odds with the legal wife. They just didn't know what this mistress had done to annoy the eldest daughter of the Su family. Madame Luo and Madame Song were both smart people. Even if they had never been in the business world, they knew that their husbands usually interacted with people, and they were quite familiar with the situation in Lin City. Since Su Peijian wanted to vent her anger, they naturally had to help her vent her anger. On the other end, Xiang Kaiping heard Su Peijian's words. Not only did her expression not relax, but it also became even uglier. Qingseng doesn't have a sister like you. Don't try to make connections. Of course, Su Peijian didn't want to acknowledge Su Qingseng as a sister. However, not wanting to acknowledge her was different from Xiang Kaiping's direct words. Auntie, I don't think you have the right to decide for Qingseng whether to acknowledge me or not. After all, my relationship with Qingseng is not something you can deny just because you want to. Xiang Kaiping stood still and looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song. She frowned slightly. Move aside. Hey, the boss isn't here yet. Auntie, don't rush. Su Peijian glanced at the shop assistant. Why? Is your boss so arrogant now? I'm here with Auntie Luo and Auntie Song. Can't he come and greet us? Miss Su, what are you talking about? The boss is coming. As they spoke, a lean middle-aged man walked out from behind. I was wondering who it was. So it's Miss Su. And Madame Luo and Madame Song. Let me know if you need anything. I'll just bring it to your door. The boss had been in the jade business in Lin City for a long time, and was quite familiar with Su Chenghui. He was more willing to give face to old Master Li. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.